Chapter 81, One Shuttle 9mm. Poor Professor Quirrell was so naive, he didn't even notice how quiet the Forbidden Forest had become. More pitiful were the two unicorns, sacrificed just like that. "Harry, don't you think it's awfully quiet here?" Rogge asked. "Isn't that a good thing?" Harry answered, glancing at him. Fang had picked up nothing dangerous. Harry always felt a little out of his depth around Rogge. Rogge carried himself like a prince, every word measured, every movement precise. If Harry didn't have his reputation as a prodigy in Quidditch and the titles of the boy who lived and savior, he'd probably never dare to meet Rogge's eyes. "This is the Forbidden Forest, not a Muggle park," Rogge said, unbuckling a leather pouch at his hip and preparing its contents. "Animals have territories. Outsiders shouldn't trespass carelessly. Be careful, we might be in the range of something dangerous." Harry's gaze fell on the object Rogge produced. "Is that a pistol?" "A Steckkin APS, fully automatic. It might take care of whatever killed the unicorn." Rogge checked the pistol with practiced movements. The crisp click as he cocked it sent a sliver of fear through Harry. He felt cold. "Shouldn't we be using wands?" Harry asked, clutching his own wand. Rogge smiled faintly when he saw Harry's grip. "If you make it through, it doesn't matter what you used. Death doesn't care whether you're a muggle or a wizard." He eased the safety off. "Let's hope we won't have to use it," he added, though the weapon ready in his hand betrayed otherwise. Fang led them deeper into the trees. Rogge's thoughts drifted to unicorns. They were too valuable to be hunted openly. A wizard who hunted unicorns would be hunted by the whole magical world. Horns and coats were supposed to be obtained only after a creature's natural death. Not every wizard was reckless enough to cut himself off from the community, like someone in particular. "Professor Quirrell, give it everything you've got," Rogge murmured, watching the branches sway. He had a feeling Dumbledore or someone close by might be watching. "We'll see. Try to take the body," a voice answered from the gloom. Fang barked, sharp and sudden. They pushed forward into an ancient oak grove, roots lacquered with moss, twisted together like the fingers of giants. A flash of green light, a keening, then a thud. Rogge rushed on ahead, and there it was, a white, luminous unicorn beneath an oak, and a dark, crouching figure hungrily bent over its neck. Fang launched himself at the shadow with a roar. The thing snapped its head around. Two eyes burned with a predatory light. Fang, startled, yelped and fled, tail tucked between his legs. "Smart dog," Rogge said approvingly. Not everyone was fortunate enough to be invited to Harry's and Lord Voldemort's private arrangement. Those who intruded uninvited usually received a curse for their trouble. The dark figure stared as Harry flew toward them, a sudden whirlwind of movement. Pain lanced across Harry's forehead, a searing stab that seemed to go right to his bones. His scar burned, he staggered and went down. Rogge didn't hesitate. He drew the APS and squeezed the trigger. 29mm rounds spat from the muzzle toward the hooded figure. Quirrell's attention was fixed on Harry. He hadn't even noticed Rogge. The muzzle flash bloomed. For an instant, it looked as if the pistol might have a headshot before Quirrell's internal alarm rang. But it was too late to cast a blocking charm. Then something weird happened. A web of force blinked into being between shooter and target. The bullets slowed, their yellow air trails visible as if caught in thick syrup, and one by one they hung in the air like thrown coins before clinking to the leaf litter and falling harmlessly to the ground. Quirrell's voice, thin and furious, rasped from under his hood. "Damn you, little wizard. How dare you use a muggle weapon to ambush me?" He looked pale beneath the fabric. If his master hadn't intervened the way he had, Quirrell wouldn't have lived through that moment. Rogge grinned. "Not bad. You've got some skill." He tapped his pocket, and a handful of grenades sprang free. "How will you answer this?" Before he could pull any pins, a heavy stomp shook the clearing. A centaur charged through the trees, not Hecarim to Rogge's private amusement, but a tall, dark-maned centaur whose coat gleamed with sweat. Quirrell ducked, sliding into shadow and melting into the trees. "You could have stayed for the fireworks," Rogge said, rearranging the grenades and tucking them back away as the centaur reached Harry. The centaur lowered himself on forelegs so Harry could clamber up onto his back. He studied Harry's lightning-shaped scar with a mixture of awe and curiosity. "You must be the Potter boy," he said. "I am Firenze." Rogge moved over to the dead unicorn, largely ignored now, and waved his wand. A zero-frost charm shrouded the creature, preserving it in a sheet of cold. Then he put the unicorn in an undetectable extension charm bag, an action Firenze watched with concern. Unicorn blood will make a wizard half alive, cursed, the centaur warned. It has a terrible price. Cursed? Rogge said, unfazed as he closed the bag. He seemed to find the situation fascinating rather than horrific. Is the curse caused by the blood itself, or by the act? Is it related to that blood curse everyone talks about? He produced a small notebook and wrote the questions down, eyes running over Firenze like an anatomical puzzle, how their bodies were built, where their organs lay, how many hearts they might have. To Rogge, even a centaur was data to be disassembled and understood. Firenze stiffened. Your glance is dangerous. Oh, I mean no harm, Rogge replied smoothly. I thought you only cared for the stars. I didn't expect you were so concerned with hearts. He smiled and tucked away the notebook. More hoofbeats crashed closer. Ronan and Bane, two other centaurs, ripped through the trees, their flanks heaving. Rogge watched them arrive with a little amusement, wondering why they hurried. Had they known the unicorn was here and come running? If so, they were late. Firenze, Bane shouted, snorting. What do you think you're doing? Aren't you ashamed to be ridden? Or are you a fool? Rogge chuckled to himself. Maybe his name isn't Firenze. He said under his breath. Maybe he's a mule. The barb was sharper than a donkey joke. Firenze bristled but turned to Harry. Do you not know who he is? He said, steaming from his nostrils at the dismissal. This is Harry Potter, the child who stood against you-know-who. Grudging respect rippled through his kin, and Firenze gathered himself to carry Harry away from the scene. Rogge shook his head and continued to smirk. Perhaps the stars are no longer worth his attention, he muttered, amused, watching the centaurs move off with Harry atop Firenze's shoulders. Chapter 82, Astrology Master. Little wizard, our tribe's affairs don't need your judgment. Bane planted himself in front of Rogge, his massive chest and broad shoulders radiating authority. All right, Bane, maybe Firenze meant well. Ronan glanced up at the night sky, his voice low and a little wistful. Little wizard, my name is Ronan. Mars is unusually bright tonight. He murmured something about a prophecy. Rogge couldn't tell what he'd read from the planets. Rogge Travis, pleased to meet you. Rogge noticed Ronan staring at Mars, and an idea struck him. He produced the star chart he'd painstakingly rubbed out and tapped his wand to unfurl it. Magic glittered across the paper, lighting up the constellations. A star chart from 700 years ago? Ronan and Bane leaned in. Centaurs were born astrologers. No wizard could match them. Even the tribe's elders had never seen a chart that old. This is certainly ancient. Ronan compared the chart to the sky and nodded. But there's a problem. Bane sniffed and pointed at the chart's southwest corner. The alignment here is all wrong, little wizard. Did you draw this yourself? Impossible. Rogge scanned it again but couldn't find any mistakes. You wizards can copy things, but you don't truly understand astrological divination, Bane scoffed. If Rogge wouldn't admit an error, Bane would point it out. The angle at which Ursa Major connects is off. The whole constellation needs to be rotated 15 degrees counterclockwise. The third star should be shifted up half a position and the sixth down 1.5. And here, Ronan nodded, indicating the center of the chart. Whether you read it in right ascension or declination, this star should be moved down by 0.3 arc degrees. Although this chart is 7 centuries old, it was pieced together roughly. Some of the stars here are not directly observable. Their positions can only be inferred from how surrounding stars shifted. Ronan's voice grew excited as he explained. Ronan, no wonder you've been the astrology champion 10 years running. Bane's admiration was genuine. This is the wisdom my grandfather taught me, Ronan said shyly. We all studied under the great elder, but few of us have your talent and your dedication, Bane added approvingly. Let me draw 2 lines, Ronan said, smiling as he pulled the chart closer and traced on the ground with his spear. First, from the isolated star of Ursa Major to Polaris, that gives the exact time of the chart. He worked the numbers quickly. 1207 AD, and a second line from Ursa Minor's Polaris to the secondary pole star determines the trajectory and angular relationships. Bane's eyes widened. So that's it. Those two lines happen to link Polaris with Alpha Leonis. Right, we can infer the coordinates of the rest of the chart from Ursa Major and Leo. Ronan and Bane calculated together. Look, this reddish star must be Helianthus 1. The cluster near it should be. Ronan trailed off as in a short time the whole chart snapped into a new, clear arrangement. Incredible. Whoever crafted this had great wisdom. Bane praised, surprised there were wizards capable of such advanced stargazing. Rogge listened, baffled. He understood the words, but the logic eluded him. It's a riddle, Ronan said, visibly excited. The chart's author hid a puzzle. When you restored it to this configuration, you solved it. So now I have the answer, and all that's left is the writing? Rogge asked, hurrying to copy down the solution. The remaining task was to inscribe it on the golden snitch. It's almost dawn. The Mars glow is gone. Little wizard, you should leave the Forbidden Forest now, Ronan warned. Thank you for your help. Rogge bowed and, after confirming everything, waved to the centaurs and left. Harry, how could you leave him in the forest? Hermione's anxiety cut across the grounds. If Hagrid hadn't sworn Rogge was all right, she'd have run after him. Maybe the chosen one got scared, someone sneered, one of the Slytherins. He ran off with the centaurs and left his classmate behind. Shut up, Malfoy, Hagrid snapped. To him, Harry's safety mattered far more than a Slytherin boy. Huh, are you all waiting for me to go back for breakfast together? A voice called. Rogge! Hermione darted toward the newcomer. Draco straightened, eyes bright. Harry's gaze fixed on Rogge. Firenze had explained how unicorn blood worked. Harry feared Snape had slain the unicorn to harvest its blood and extend Voldemort's life. Rogge visited Snape's office often. Surely he'd seen him. Me? Rogge shook his head. I don't know who that was. Harry took a fearful step back. Rogge was lying. Why would he lie? Could he be? Harry glanced at the rest of the Slytherins, memory filling in Ron's warnings. The thought prickled coldly at his skin. Professor Snape might be able to tell us something from the body, Hermione said. You have the unicorn's body? Hermione demanded. She had never seen a unicorn up close. The idea made her face pale. The unicorn's body? No. Harry suddenly drew his wand and aimed it at Rogge. Expelliarmus! Rogge reacted faster, uttering a spell that knocked Harry's wand from his hand. Mr. Potter, it's my right to decide what to do with the unicorn's body. You can't tell me what to do. Hagrid, Harry shouted. Hagrid positioned himself between Rogge and Harry, glaring. He'd underestimated this Slytherin's boldness. Stealing a unicorn's corpse and assaulting Harry were beyond rude. Oh, really? Rogge shrugged. A thin red glow flickered across his wand tip. He leaned in and hissed. Hagrid, if you want to fight, take out your wand. Don't think you can win it with your fists, Hagrid growled. You might survive blows aimed at you, but what about Harry? Rogge's smile was small and vicious. Hagrid frozen, his face contorted as if he'd tasted something foul. Give me 500,000 galleons, Rogge said suddenly, almost casually, and I'll consider selling it to you. His tone implied he didn't care how the others saw him. Already, in Harry's eyes, Rogge might as well be an ally of Voldemort. Rogge glanced at Malfoy. What are you standing there for? Want to get yourself beaten up? The Forbidden Forest, strictly speaking, isn't part of the school grounds. He gestured subtly for Hermione and Neville to fall back. He didn't want Gryffindor loyalty dragging Hermione into the fray. Rogge, wait for me, Malfoy called, hurrying up and throwing Harry a mocking look as he passed. Chapter 83. Deduct 5 points, severely. Not to Professor Snape, Harry insisted. We can't give the unicorn's body to him. He's an accomplice of Lord Voldemort. Hagrid, Professor Snape can be trusted. He is not you-know-who's accomplice. Hagrid kept denying Harry's accusation as best he could. Hermione, standing nearby, glanced between them and fell silent when she saw how determined Harry was. Rogge, do we really have to hand the unicorn to the headmaster? Malfoy muttered from behind them. What are you talking about? Rogge answered, glancing up at the brightening sky, and then warily at Malfoy. Let's sell the unicorn. My family has contacts. We could make a lot of galleons. Stop right there. Rogge's eyes hardened. Selling a unicorn? Draco, if you want to die, don't drag me into it. He was genuinely worried for Lucius. Could Malfoy be trusted to keep something like that quiet? If he didn't shut him up, Malfoy might even blurt out the smuggling channels. Rogge would bet Dumbledore was watching. The headmaster would keep an eye on the whole business until the unicorn was in Snape's hands. For emphasis, and perhaps to teach Malfoy a lesson, Rogge muttered, "Enough." "Unwording," Rogge said, flicking his wand. Malfoy's tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth so he couldn't speak. He followed resentfully as Rogge strode toward the castle. Rogge couldn't help smiling to himself. The headmaster's spells are wonderfully useful. He praised the Half-Blood Prince's genius in an odd little aside. They bypassed the Great Hall and went down to the dungeons. Rogge pushed open the door to the potions office out of habit. "Morning, Professor." Snape looked up from his desk and fixed his black eyes on Rogge. "Is your detention finished?" Malfoy tried to make hoarse sounds, staring at Snape with pleading, raw-mouthed eyes. Snape's glance flicked to Rogge, and he knew immediately who was responsible. "Untie him," he said, and didn't bother to take out his wand. He simply spoke the countercharm, and Malfoy was able to speak again. "Where's the herbology book?" Snape asked, but Rogge moved past the question, pulling the unicorn from under a covering of frost. It was a tragic, crystalline beauty, death and purity frozen together. Malfoy reached out, unable to help himself. "It's a unicorn! It's beautiful!" "We were too late," Hagrid said softly. "Lord Voldemort killed it. It's the second unicorn that's died." At the name, Malfoy trembled. "Rogge, don't say his name." "Malfoy, go to your lesson," Snape snapped, and the boy fled, remembering with a start that he had potions that morning. Snape shut the office door behind them and gave Rogge a long, appraising look. 0-degree frost charm?" he said, nodding. Preserving the ingredients, freshness at freezing temperatures without killing their activity. It was a clever bit of work. "I don't know," Rogge hedged. "I just smelled a familiar, foul garlic smell from under the black robes." "Garlic?" Snape sniffed, and then his expression went sharp. "Gunpowder?" He sniffed again, eyes narrowing. A wizard using muggle weapons, a handgun, in a duel would be an embarrassment to the whole profession. "Hand it over." Rogge cursed under his breath. He'd forgotten Snape's nose was finer than any dog's. He reached into his pocket and produced a small pouch, then handed it across. "You're a wizard, Rogge," Snape said, and slammed the handgun down onto the desk with a heavy thud. "You can't use muggle weapons," Snape thundered. "This is beneath us. After years of magical training at Hogwarts, you rely on these crude devices?" "They're useful," Rogge muttered. "Useful?" Snape's voice rose until his hair bristled. "You've been corrupted by muggles. Is there nothing in your mind but how to win by the easiest means? Have you no concept of wizarding honor? If our traditions can be trampled so casually, then what was the point of all your training?" Rogge shrank back. He wanted to argue that muggle weapons weren't crude, but Snape's homicidal glare stopped him. Snape sneered and continued his tirade, condemning anyone who would stoop to such methods. The upshot was that morning's potions class was canceled. The students who made it to the dungeons stayed and studied on their own, while Snape's roars echoed from his office. Those who disliked Rogge smirked. Ron, for one, looked pleased to hear Snape yelling at someone. Harry, however, grew anxious. He'd been tempted more than once to go find Dumbledore himself. Snape's condemnation went on and on. "I thought our shadow prefect, Mr. Rogge Travis, would at least retain a shred of Slytherin shrewdness," he sneered. "But evidently not. You are devoid of wizarding honor. You've lost even the most basic standards. Or perhaps you don't even belong in this house at all," he spat, dragging Gryffindor into his rebuke unfairly. The Gryffindors bristled. Why include them in this? Snape's fury did not relent. "If you sully the honor of Slytherin again, I'll be the one to exact proper magical punishment. You will regret your unauthorized use of inferior muggle methods," he bellowed. "I'm giving you one last chance to reflect. Get out of my sight, or get out of Slytherin." Finally, after yelling for the better part of the morning, Snape dismissed Rogge and did something that made even Rogge's jaw drop. He deducted 5 points from Slytherin. "Slytherin loses 5 points," Snape declared. "Consider this your lesson." To have a professor take points from his own house, it was an extraordinary display of anger. From that day on, everyone gave Snape a wide berth. For the rest of the year, students steered clear of him and his staircase. For the remainder of the potions period, the classroom was full of unnaturally obedient kids, which, despite everything, pleased Snape. "You didn't have to be that harsh, Severus," a gentle voice spoke from the doorway. Headmaster Dumbledore had been invisible nearby and now revealed himself, relaxing as the storm of reprimand finally subsided. He sighed as if relieved that the barrage of fury was over. Were the scolding to continue much longer, even he, an old man, might not have borne it. Chapter 84, Professor Aurora. Roger is still a little wizard. It's inevitable he'll make mistakes, Dumbledore said with a smile as he opened Roger's bag. As he pulled out one grenade after another, Snape's pale face flushed, then darkened, then took on a purple tinge, like a dye works in full swing. Traverse! Snape ground out the name, enunciating it slowly. Roger, who had just escaped the dungeons, felt a chill and quickened his pace. When dealing with Lord Voldemort, some methods that don't fit wizarding niceties are acceptable, Dumbledore said, pulling the pin from a grenade. The high explosive detonated in his hand, but the blast slowed as if time itself had lagged. The energy and shrapnel were somehow constrained within his palm. Powerful stuff, Dumbledore nodded, rubbing his tingling hand. If someone were unprepared, they would have died from that force. Fortunately, I arranged things so Firenze acted first, otherwise Professor Quirrell might really have been killed. Albus, this will destroy wizarding traditions. Even Lord Voldemort didn't want to overthrow our customs. Snape snapped. Are you saying your student is more terrifying than Lord Voldemort? Dumbledore asked calmly, but his voice carried weight. I don't know, Snape admitted, shaking his head. He's serious and terrifyingly talented at whatever interests him, but for the things he doesn't care for, he refuses to touch them at all. Quidditch? Dumbledore smiled. Madame Hooch had complained to him as well. We all know he grew up around Azkaban. Wizards on broomsticks look to him like dementors. His aversion to flying isn't so much learned as innate, Snape said helplessly. Slytherin still hadn't found a seeker to match him. So you taught him Sectum Sempra, Dumbledore said, rummaging in his pocket for a lemon drop and popping it into his mouth. It's better than his slipping into the restricted section to find spells. Dumbledore's gaze lingered on the great unicorn carcass outside the window. Roger's innate magical ability surpassed Snape's. It was, in its way, unsettling. In his first year, he could conjure 0-degree frost at will. His expecto patronum had already manifested as a full Patronus. In subjects like potions and transfiguration, few in Hogwarts history had shown such early promise. The Merman's reports added more. Roger had inherited his father Theodore's gift, an ability that could amplify a spell's power without apparent limit. Dumbledore felt caution. Roger was not like Tom. Tom was far inferior to him. He reminded Dumbledore of someone from his own youth, Gellert Grindelwald, except Roger was far more reserved and therefore harder to predict. Dumbledore drew a deep breath and let his gaze drift out the window. This child always knows what he wants and what he doesn't. His aims have always been very clear. Albus, why not let Roger look in the mirror of Erised? Snape asked. I've thought about it, Dumbledore replied. But our Mr. Roger doesn't seem to crave adventure. Common room, classrooms, the library, and the Great Hall, those are his worlds. He shrugged. If the mirror were placed in the room of requirement, it would probably be lost. Maybe the Marauder's map should have been given to him, rather than falling into the hands of the Weasley twins, Snape grumbled. The map would be wasted on those two pranksome brothers. I'll think on it. Oh, Dumbledore brightened and stroked his beard. The centaur helped Roger solve that riddle. Professor Aurora could assist during astronomy on Wednesday evening. Severus, I also need you to extract the unicorn's blood. I expect Professor Quirrell will ask to borrow some. I understand, Snape agreed. The sight of the unicorn left him thoughtful. Apart from that one person, no one in the wizarding world dared invoke such a curse. By the way, what happens if Nagini drinks unicorn blood? Dumbledore asked. Back in the dormitory, Roger had released Nagini from his knapsack. The creature coiled and flicked its tongue, eyes hateful, as if it wished to bite the little wizard before it to death. Don't glare like that. You were human once, Roger said, motioning for the serpent to calm. He gripped a sensitive spot and drew 1 milliliter of blood for preservation. He labeled the test tube and slid it into a box. After feeding, Nagini curled back into the knapsack to rest. Under Roger's regimen, she had developed basic conditioned reflexes. 1 milliliter of blood drawn daily, then she could eat her fill. If she resisted, A well-placed stupefy put her down. She might starve for 3 days, but the blood would still be taken each day. After several attempts, the serpent learned she couldn't beat Rogge and settled into a simple cycle of eating and sleeping. Research into the so-called blood curse had stalled, so Rogge settled for collecting samples every day for future experiments. The obstacle was communication. Rogge couldn't speak Parseltongue. Among the wizards he knew, only Lord Voldemort and Harry could. Harry? That was out of the question. There would be no way to explain how he knew Harry spoke Parseltongue. He pipetted a bit of the unicorn blood he had collected from the grounds into a test tube. The fluid quivered violently and then fell eerily still. Rogge put on his magic monocular and examined a slide. Every cell inside was shattered. "There's a reaction," he noted, though the current conditions prevented further analysis. He sighed and wrote his first experimental record. Very few wizards had studied the blood curse. The only commonly accepted point was that it passed from mother to daughter, not to sons. Rogge, thinking like a Muggle scientist, suspected an X chromosome link, but this was the wizarding world. No one could say for certain. It might be a straightforward curse, like the jinx on the Defense Against the Dark Arts chair. He circled the word curse heavily on his notes. Modern instruments might rule out some possibilities. Better yet would be to find a family with a hereditary case to study. Parseltongue nagged at him again. His only subject was Nagini. If he could converse with her directly, research would move faster. But Parseltongue seemed innate. He'd never heard of it being learned. Maybe he should widen his search beyond the gaunts of Britain. There might be Parcel speakers elsewhere in Europe. He flipped through portraits of obscure dark wizards and paused at one. Herbo, notorious for breeding a basilisk, mastering Parseltongue, and creating a Horcrux. Perhaps Herbo's Horcrux remained somewhere, or maybe descendants of his line yet lived. After astronomy that evening, Professor Aurora called to him. "Rogge, could you wait a moment?" She approached with a smile. "Firenze told me you already deciphered the star map's secret." "Yes, Professor Aurora. You know him?" Rogge asked, surprised that she had ties with the centaur herd. Chapter 85, Remarks on the Launch. We're approaching 200,000 characters, and the novel will officially launch tomorrow at 12 p.m. I'm not a fast typist, but I'll conservatively put out 5 chapters tomorrow. To be honest, every time I finish a new chapter, I get really nervous when I check the reviews later. I've never been this anxious, even when checking exam results. With the official release coming, I'm even more on edge because I don't know how it will go. We're closing in on 5,000 favorites, and a new milestone is about to be reached. As this is Guzi's first novel to be officially released, I'm so glad to have so many readers supporting it. Every time I open the back end and see everyone's votes, I can't describe how happy I feel. I've read all your comments and complaints, and I appreciate the feedback. Please bear with me for the parts I didn't handle well. Some readers said the characters don't match the original work or that some plot elements are odd. I accept that criticism. There were details I didn't think through at first because the movie version left such a strong impression. Rita's appearance, for example. I changed those small details later. As for things that affect the overall plot structure, well, I can't promise I'll change everything. And yes, there are things I didn't do perfectly. Anyway, thank you all for your continued companionship and support, and thank you to editor Ginger T for her guidance and help. Guzi secretly asks, "May I bow 3 times in thanks?" Okay, no more jokes. Tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m., a free chapter will be posted as usual to thank everyone for their support. Paid chapters will be released after 12 p.m. tomorrow, meaning at least 1 free chapter, plus 5 paid chapters. I won't play the pity card. If you think the story is worth reading, please subscribe. He remembered Professor Aurora sitting to the headmaster's left at the start of term. Opposite her had been Deputy Headmistress McGonagall. Why was a relatively unknown professor seated there? Rogge watched her with curiosity. Did Aurora help unravel the prophecy Trelawney made about Voldemort? He murmured to himself. Centaurs are natural astrologers, Aurora said, genuinely praising her neighbors from the Forbidden Forest. There is much wizards can learn from them. Professor, can you predict the future from the stars? Rogge pressed. Prophecy is Professor Trelawney's specialty, Aurora answered humbly. I only catch occasional hints from the heavens. If you're interested in divination, you can take it in your 3rd year. Professor, Ronan said Mars was very bright that night. Does that mean anything? Rogge asked. Aurora's eyes widened a little. She'd revealed more than she intended, and she quickly clipped her words. July? She repeated, surprised. Rogge frowned. After a year at Hogwarts, he understood the basics of astronomy. The prophecy said that only one between the Chosen One and Lord Voldemort could live, and for the moment it remained secret. July is associated with Mars, Aurora went on, warming to the subject. In astrology, it relates to Leo. In Roman myth, July belongs to Vulcan, and Mars is the god of war. It symbolizes conflict, strength, and chaos. If it's a prophecy about July, then the magical world is facing war. Rogue's eyes shone, bright and sharp as a North Star. Aurora was taken aback. The boy in front of her was clever. From a single scrap of information, he was drawing wide-reaching conclusions. Rogge, she hesitated, then asked, if the person in the prophecy were born at the end of July, who do you think it would be? Rogge considered. Harry? Neville? Who it is isn't as important as the reasoning behind it, he thought, pacing, tracing an imaginary circle around the imagined red planet. If Ronan said Mars was very bright that night, that could mean the wheel of fate has begun to turn. There was an odd presence in the Forbidden Forest that night. Perhaps one of us is the one the prophecy names. Very bold, Aurora nodded. If it had been outside class, she might have given him extra credit. Apart from Hagrid, there are only 5 of you. Malfoy and I are Slytherin. That doesn't match Mars. It seems likely the prophesied child is in Gryffindor. Mars is associated with masculinity, Rogge continued. Hermione doesn't fit that criterion. That leaves Harry and Neville. If only I knew their birth dates. They were both born on July 31st, Aurora supplied, hoping the quick-witted boy would carry the thought further. How do you remember that? Rogge asked. I remember every student's birthday at Hogwarts, she said with a smile, watching the stars with him. You were born on June 6th, Gemini. Her gaze then flicked to his chart. Though, it's odd. Only dark stars gleam in your horoscope. Rogge felt the implication of Gemini and those dark stars and quickly shifted the subject. Perhaps the sky over the North Sea is too dark and the aurora lingers too long. Better to avoid being pinned by astrology. Professor, could the prophecy apply to both of them? It is, after all, a prophecy. Anyone could become the hero. Interesting answer. Aurora did not argue. They talked like 2 riddlers, turning symbols and signs over in their heads. Trelawney and I disagree in places, but part of the prophecy has been verified, so she might have been right. I tend to think Neville was probable, but Harry did defeat Voldemort in the end. Perhaps one can triumph over fate. Rather than leaving everything to the stars, it's better to decide for oneself. Rogge shrugged. He didn't care whether Harry or Neville would be the one to kill Voldemort. Your answers always surprise me, Aurora said, genuinely pleased. Few wizards would dare to deny fate so easily, not even Dumbledore, whom many called the greatest wizard. Thank you, Professor. Rogge held his hand out, as if trying to clutch the starlight itself. If everyone's destiny were fixed, the night sky would be dreadfully dull. There are always stars that struggle to break free, Aurora agreed. Some shatter into meteors, others blaze into suns. Do you think I could become an astrologer? Rogge asked. Aurora's expression shifted to one of regret. I'm sorry. Before this conversation, I always thought you had talent. Now, you could be the best student in divination class, but you could never be the worst astrologer. She lowered her head kindly. Astrologers must have faith in the course of fate, and you, she hesitated, you don't believe in fate. All right. I hope I can pass the divination courses, Rogge said with a sigh. Exams aren't true divination anyway. True divination can never be measured by tests. Aurora pulled a book from the shelf, Star Trajectory. The tiny volume unfolded like a rug. It can serve as a theoretical reference, but not a practical guide. Rogge, even a deviation of half a stellar position can alter a prophecy's outcome entirely, she warned. I understand, Professor. Rogge pocketed the miniaturized Star Trajectory. He muttered under his breath. If only there were a dictionary for Parseltongue. Then he froze. The cadence of the stairwell felt wrong. Someone was moving the steps. Somebody wants to harm me, he told himself, pausing on the landing. Could it be Old B? Besides him, who else could control the moving stairs? Start simulation. 1. You turn and change direction, still getting lost in the tower. You find a secret room and see the mirror of Arist. You refuse to face the mirror, and Dumbledore becomes wary of you. 4. You follow Harry to the room where the Philosopher's Stone is hidden and are discovered by Professor Quirrell. 5. Professor Quirrell retaliates against you, severely injuring you. You fall into a coma for a year and must repeat a grade, becoming Harry's junior. Simulation stopped. So cruel, Rogue muttered, expression hardening. He forced himself onward. A hidden corridor lay ahead, filled with dust and old cobwebs. A heavy wooden door marked the end, not locked. He pushed it open, eager for another simulation. You see your past life in the mirror of Erised. Dumbledore grows suspicious and questions your identity. 3. You are killed by Professor Quirrell and become a ghost at Hogwarts. Rogue's voice trembled slightly as he whispered, ashamed of the show his fear would make. He opened the door fully. Inside, a full-length mirror filled the room, set in a metal frame held by the claws of 2 golden-winged beasts. He stepped closer, time for another mental run. Again, he thought, I want to become stronger, stronger than Dumbledore. You long for power and authority, seeing yourself as leader of the Dark Wizards reflected in the mirror. Headmaster Dumbledore grows wary of you. Professor Quirrell speaks to you, and Lord Voldemort lays an imperious curse upon you. Stop, Rogue roared inwardly. Outwardly, he forced a look of puzzled curiosity. He read the word carved on the frame. Erised. Mirror. He dared not look down into the glass. The mirror would show not faces, but deepest desires, and he could not risk seeing what might take root. Instead, he said the letters out loud, rearranging them until the phrase made sense. The inscription rearranged to its meaning, I show not your face, but your heart's desire. He murmured the words slowly, as if buying time. He had one choice left. Last chance, he told himself. I'm going in. Rogge burned for revenge, to kill every Dementor and raise Azkaban to the sea. He returned to the Travis family's lavish manor. The study was lined with books, the house elves attentive and graceful. Dumbledore appeared behind him and warned him away from bad habits. Stop, Rogge breathed a sigh of relief. The mirror's vision had been unsettling and bluntly immoral, but simple. If Dumbledore questioned him, he could blame his grandfather Torquil, claim it was Torquil's poisonous influence. When the old man had been alive, he had quarreled with Dumbledore. Now, as a portrait, he was even less intimidating. This isn't your face, Dumbledore said. It's the desire in the depths of your heart. Rogge stood and stared at the silver-gray glass. On its surface, Azkaban crouched in the churn of the North Sea. He saw himself flying, wand raised. From the tip erupted jackdaw-like shadows that shredded Dementors. His reflected self sent a torrent of magic that became a world-drowning tsunami. It smashed into Azkaban, reducing the prison to rubble that sank beneath the waves. Rogge felt a fierce satisfaction. He tucked the borrowed books into an undetectable extension charm bag and slid them back onto the shelf. A house elf approached with tea, graceful and obliging in her movements. Oh, Rogge, you found this room too? Dumbledore's voice came from behind. Rogge feigned surprise. Have others seen it, Headmaster? You're always good at finding clues in language, Dumbledore replied, joining him at the mirror. Harry and Ron have both looked into it. He smiled at the words inscribed on the floor. You've discovered its beauty. Awkward, Rogge rubbed his neck. Headmaster, it's all Grandfather Torquil. At Christmas, he tells me strange stories. He said he knew you, that you fought together in Germany. Rogge, curfew is beginning, Dumbledore cut in. Ah! Rogge hurried for the door. Good night, Headmaster. Good night, Dumbledore answered. When Rogge's footsteps faded, the headmaster turned back to the mirror. A man appeared there, long, golden hair and sharp blue eyes that mixed confidence with cunning. Though simply dressed and a little unkempt, he had a polite bearing. Grindelwald. Long time no see, Dumbledore murmured, his face reflecting 7 parts nostalgia and 3 parts regret. After a moment, he dismissed the image. Hatred for Dementors, hunger for knowledge, and Torquil's ideas, he said quietly. The latter 2 were morally questionable, but they posed little direct danger to the wider wizarding world. Ah, pure-blood youngsters and outspoken elders, always trouble, he sighed. Exhausted when he finally tumbled back into his dormitory, Rogge flung Aurora's book aside and collapsed onto his bed. He had nearly fallen into a trap. The old man was controlling. Any sympathy for Grindelwald had never come from kindness. Today proved the headmaster watched him, and Rogge would have to be more cautious. He glared resentfully at the memory the mirror had shown him. There is no such thing as a free lunch, he thought. He nearly set the books alight with his wand, then changed his mind. He had risked too much to burn them. Voldemort isn't an idiot. Dumbledore must have left the school to bait him out, Rogge told himself. He put the books back and began to plan retaliation. If the Philosopher's Stone was beyond reach, there were unicorns in the Forbidden Forest. His eyes gleamed. He wrote a summons for Bubble. House Elf, he wrote, do not disappoint your master. In Slytherin, plans revolving around unicorns quietly took shape. Rogge convinced himself it wasn't a conspiracy, but a necessary step to protect magical creatures from becoming sacrifices. Before Defense Against the Dark Arts class, Malfoy was boasting to Goyle and Crabbe about the Forbidden Forest. Do you two even know the forest? Malfoy sneered, looking down his nose. Filch sent me there as punishment. Hagrid wouldn't let me do anything useful. Malfoy, don't insult my friend, Harry snapped. Friend? Malfoy laughed and glanced at Ron. Oh yes, Potter's charming friends. Malfoy, who are you calling an idiot? Ron leapt up, red with anger. If you can't even manage transfiguration and a basic curse. Malfoy flicked his wand and cast the leg locker curse. Ron's legs snapped together, and he toppled to the ground, face nearly meeting the dirt. Laughter rippled through the class. Ron, are you all right? Harry helped him to his feet. Humiliated and bleeding from his nose, Ron wanted the ground to swallow him. Damn Malfoy, he muttered. Challenge him, Harry hissed, drawing his wand. Dueling me? Malfoy scoffed. Potter, you abandoned a companion in the forest. Dueling you would be beneath me. Harry isn't that sort of person, Ron protested, standing protectively in front of him. Is that so? Malfoy sauntered over. If that's true, Mr. Potter, why did you leave the forest first? Why did Rogge not return until dawn? That giant said you met the creature that killed the unicorn. Were you scared? Did you run? Harry's not a coward, Ron shouted, placing himself between Malfoy and Harry. At least Rogge gave the unicorn's body to the dean. Humph, Malfoy smirked. Don't believe it? I saw the unicorn's body myself. It looked remarkably untouched. Rogge stepped into the classroom just then. He told Malfoy to sit down and helped Ron break the leg locker curse. Turning to Harry, he gave a small, reassuring smile. Harry and I faced the creature together. A centaur saved us. His tone asked Harry to drop his hostility. They needed unity more than quarrels, while Voldemort still threatened the wizarding world. Unfortunately, the centaur doesn't like me much, Rogue offered, stepping in to help Harry out of a tight spot. He turned to Ron, whose eyes flashed with barely contained anger. Mr. Potter, a wizard's duel is a serious matter. At the very least, your companion should be prepared. Class is about to start, and you wouldn't want your house to lose points, would you? Aye. Faced with Rogue's stern look, Ron clamped his mouth shut. Anyway, we're in last place, so losing points doesn't matter. Malfoy sneered. His words landed where they hurt. Between their frantic studying and everything else, they'd forgotten how many points Gryffindor had already lost. Malfoy rubbing it in felt like a knife. For once, neither Harry nor Ron answered back, and Malfoy basked in the small audience of first years with a triumphant smile. Cough! Snape, Rogue, glared at him, and the classroom went quiet. Professor Quirrell, his face still wrapped in cloth, came out of his office, and everyone fell obediently silent and sat down. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry for being late, Quirrell stammered, looking harmless as ever. This is our last class of the school year. You can ask anything, like dark wizards, or... The moment he said dark wizards, the students' minds went straight to you-know-who. Heads dropped. No one wanted to say his name aloud. Professor Quirrell, do you know Herbo? Rogue surprised everyone by leaning forward and fixing his gaze on the back of Quirrell's head. Oh, Herbo. Quirrell considered the name and then said, the despicable Herbo, right? Yes. Rogue produced a wizard card. It says he was the first to breed a basilisk and also created the first Horcrux. Professor, what are a basilisk and a Horcrux? Quirrell's smile tightened for a moment, then he recovered with a practiced cheerfulness. Good question. Slytherin gets 5 points. His eyes took on a darker gleam as he turned and wrote Herbo's name on the blackboard. The despicable Herbo, one of the oldest and most notorious dark wizards. Of course, dark wizards are bad. There's no such thing as great when you're talking about them. Only dark wizards would ever use a flattering term like that. The students shivered. Quirrell hurried to soften the mood. He's dead, by the way. Herbo lived in ancient Greece, before Christ. You can only see him in a chocolate frog card. His joke and over-the-top tone drew nervous laughter, and the classroom relaxed. He created what we now call the basilisk. It's not just a snake. Think of a snake-like magical creature, entirely emerald green, with 2 long, venomous fangs. Quirrell sketched a basilisk on the board. Never look directly into its eyes. Its gaze can kill. He set down the chalk and made a curious hissing noise. Harry looked around, puzzled. Why wasn't anyone taking notes when the professor clearly expected them to? Did I hear something? Harry nudged Ron. Did he actually say that? No. Ron shook his head and looked at Rogge with distaste. This won't be on the test. No point writing it down. A Horcrux is an evil magical object, Quirrell went on. No one but the truly wicked studies them. He didn't elaborate. I once visited Greece. In their legends, though Herbo is dead, his basilisk might still be alive, could be 1,800 years old by now. That's old, Ron breathed, tugging Harry's sleeve. Older than Nicholas Flamel. Shh, Harry warned. If Rogge made the connection with the Philosopher's Stone, he would certainly tell Snape. Quirrell warmed to his subject and, surprisingly, stopped stammering. An excellent graduate of Hogwarts with years of travel and study behind him, he spoke with ease about famous dark wizards and local legends. The first years listened, fascinated and often exclaiming at his stories. If Quirrell hadn't been deceived by Lord Voldemort, he might have made a fine defense against the dark arts teacher, Rogge muttered quietly. Quirrell, meanwhile, kept speaking, injecting little anecdotes that had the pupils leaning forward. The Bloody Baron haunts Hogwarts, Quirrell said toward the end of class. If you whisper his name at Peeves, that troublesome poltergeist might well lose his wits. The bell for dismissal rang in the corridor, and Quirrell, sounding regretful, brought the lesson to a close. That's all for the first years today. After the summer, we'll cover more famous wizards. Goodbye, Professor, they chorused. Quirrell smiled and waved them out the door. Rogge watched him leave, puzzled. Was Quirrell unaware of the so-called Defense Against the Dark Arts curse, or did he simply enjoy being a teacher? When the classroom finally emptied, Rogge sauntered to the front and leaned on the teacher's desk. He couldn't resist a parting jab. Professor Quirrell, you should be careful. Rogge? There's a rumor that you-know-who cursed that position. No one can hold it safely for more than a year. Rogge, you-know-who is dead. The curse must have failed. Quirrell's voice held a hint of unease. His master had never mentioned anything. This year, my classes are over, and I'm fine. He spread his hands and smiled. But the House Cup isn't decided yet. Before Quirrell could say more, a voice with a rasp like silk and poison slid through the bandages at the back of his head. Mr. Rogge, it breathed, interested in coming to my office for a chat about the curse? Rogue's pulse thudded. Cold sweat prickled along his spine. Damn it! Was that an invitation from Lord Voldemort? He barked a mental command. Start simulation. Scenarios flickered through his head. 1. You refuse Quirrell's invitation. 2. The moment you turn, Quirrell casts Imperio on you. 3. You are sent to steal unicorn blood from Snape's office. Rogge stopped the stream. The second and third options made his skin crawl. Quirrell, bandaged though he was, could be swift and ruthless. Rogge didn't want to waste his best spells on 2 masters at once. He reset the simulation, deciding to accept the invitation and see what followed. New outcomes appeared. 1. You accept Quirrell's invitation. 2. Quirrell launches a surprise attack which you manage to block. 3. You threaten to tell the headmaster, and Lord Voldemort personally persuades you. 4. Lord Voldemort coerces and tempts you, seeking unicorn blood. 5. You bargain with Lord Voldemort. He brands you with the dark mark before letting you go. Rogge let out a long breath. Accepting Quirrell's call didn't look fatal, but he had no desire to emerge with a hideous dark mark carved into his arm. He squared his shoulders and called out, Of course, Professor. They chatted casually about the history of the dark arts as they walked to Quirrell's office. Rogue, your grasp of the dark arts is impressive. You even mastered Sectum Sempra. That's a spell Professor Snape developed himself. Quirrell's praise came with a softness that suggested something else beneath. Our head of house seems to hold a grudge against me. Old news, Quirrell said, pushing the office door open. Come in. Those words were like a starter pistol. Before the sentence finished, both Quirrell and Rogue moved. Neither drew wands, both preferred wandless casting. They acted in the same instant, and the outcome hung in the balance, decided in an instant. Imperio. Expelliarmus. That night, when Rogge Travis nearly killed himself with a muggle pistol, Quirrell was furious. To him, Rogge Travis was just a smug Slytherin who didn't understand the glory of wizard dueling. He looked down on the boy, and his movements grew sluggish. He could clearly cast silently and wandlessly, but he pulled out his wand anyway to demonstrate. The instant the wand left his hand, his spell hadn't even finished before it collided with Rogge's. Wandless casting? Quirrell barked as his wand flew from his grip. Professor, my spell was faster, Rogge said, pointing his wand at Quirrell's temple and forcing him back into a chair. Rogge Travis, how dare you attack a professor? Do you know the consequences of that? Quirrell shouted, trying to regain control. Consequences? Rogge smiled, fingering Quirrell's wand. Alderwood and unicorn hair, Professor. What do you think would happen if I handed this to the Ministry of Magic? Do you really think they'd find anything on it? He shoved the wand into his bag. Give me back my wand, or I'll dock. Quirrell began, flustered. 50 points. No, 150. How about 1,000 points? Rogge cut in, his smile widening. Have you thought how you'll explain it to Headmaster Dumbledore? Quirrell, a poor debater, was left speechless. I'll send you to Azkaban. Azkaban. He leapt up, but the tip of Rogge's wand lit red, and Quirrell shrank back into his chair. Calm down, Rogge said coolly. The boy's eyes were flat and unreadable. Quirrell felt a chill. His instinct told him this wasn't a bluff. Rogge might actually mean to kill him. Humph. Didn't anyone tell you I came out of Azkaban? Rogge sneered. Perhaps you'll need to explain why a first year, why a little wizard, attacked the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. Defeated, maybe even killed, by a first year in a one-on-one duel. How embarrassing. And by the way, did no one tell you to bathe more? Rogge added, wrinkling his nose at the strong odor. He thought of Lord Voldemort's lack of a nose and understood why Quirrell always smelled of garlic. Then, with cold amusement, he continued, and about your unicorn killing. Quirrell, let me speak to him, a voice hissed. Master, your power, another voice muttered. Shut up, you fool. Quirrell snapped in a sudden panic. He forgot his anger, unwound his turban, and turned. The back of his head was no longer smooth cloth. Exposed there was a face, waxen and burned, grotesquely twisted. It seemed as if the skin itself had been scorched and reshaped. Rogge Travis, Lord Voldemort said, his voice deep and hoarse. The office chilled as if an icy wind had passed through. Should I call you Professor Quirrell or Lord Voldemort? Rogge smiled and kept his wand trained. I am the greatest wizard of all time, Voldemort began. Stop, Rogge interrupted. Headmaster Dumbledore has never called himself that. What right do you have? Albus, that coward, Voldemort spat through clenched teeth. If it weren't for Harry Potter, his tone was filled with hatred. Rogge Travis, your family once followed me. Theodore and Burke were among my most capable subordinates. First, only certain individuals from my family followed you, not the whole family. Second, one's dead and the other's serving life. Following you wasn't very sensible, Rogge cut in, his irritation palpable. He glared at the ruined face above Quirrell's shoulder, suppressing a surge of anger. Lord Voldemort, get to the point. We haven't all night. Rogge glanced at the flat, snake-like nostrils and answered bluntly. An impatient little wizard, Voldemort sneered. He lowered his voice to a threatening whisper. All your relatives bear the dark mark. Say the word, and they'll wish they'd died instead. Rogge burst out laughing. Voldemort, confused, stared. What was so funny? Are you an orphan? Voldemort began. You're the orphan. Your whole family is gone, Rogge spat. Thanks to you, my father Theodore is dead at the Ministry's hands, and my mother and I were locked in Azkaban for 11 years. Oh, so you're Theodore's child, and your mother is Jessica Lestrange. Voldemort's voice changed as realization dawned. A Death Eater's child. He tried to seize control. Lord Voldemort, did no one tell you that interrupting people is rude? Rogge chided. He added, with a flash of dark confidence, aren't you afraid I'll kill your mother? Voldemort's snake-like red eyes fixed on him. It's not too late to act while I speak, he threatened. For now, we still have time, Rogge said coolly. And if you don't believe me about my mother, Dumbledore removed her dark mark. You can try for yourself. He finished without mercy. I'm not like those others, born an orphan and abandoned. Voldemort stared at him, unsettled. This boy was different. Did he not care for his mother? Or was he as ruthless as Voldemort had been? A shadow of unease crept into the Dark Lord's heart. Rogge Travis, aren't you afraid I'll kill you? Voldemort roared, the office papers whipping into the air as a pressure like a physical force slammed toward the boy. Voldemort's face twisted further, as if the skin might tear and an unholy maw burst from his skull. Wow, Mr. Lord Voldemort, you still have the strength to threaten, Rogge said gaily. He refused to be cowed. I may not be your match, but I can certainly fetch Dumbledore. You claim to be the greatest wizard of all time. Shall we bet our lives? Rogge goaded. His wand was ready. Voldemort hesitated. You are the Dark Lord, the former nightmare of the British magical world. I am a first year at Hogwarts, Rogge continued, egging him on. By the numbers, your chance of winning is nearly 100%. He wanted to provoke Voldemort into action. But Quirrell had already found the Philosopher's Stone, and Voldemort did not want to expose himself now. For the sake of his resurrection, he could even let Harry Potter, his mortal enemy, go, so he would not be undone by a brat. Voldemort forced himself to shift tone. His voice became calm and measured. Rogge Travis, there's no need for provocation. We are both wizards, not enemies. Let us talk. There need be no bloodshed among wizards. Rogge tried to keep a straight face, but laughed despite himself. Voldemort's words sounded absurd. This was the same man who had slaughtered and terrorized countless wizards and witches. What are you laughing at? Voldemort demanded. I thought of something funny, Rogge said. What's funny? Summer vacation is coming soon. Rogge began, and that was all it took. Voldemort's composure snapped. Rogge Travis, I have known the hardship of the Muggle years. Magic is our life. It is the foundation of our superiority. We are destined to rule the filthy Muggle-born, to establish a pure-blood world. Hatred cannot control us. There should be no bloodshed among wizards. Rogge burst out laughing, breaking whatever control Voldemort had tried to impose. What are you laughing at? Tell me, Voldemort demanded, every syllable a threat. Chapter 90, The Aggrieved Dark Lord. Mr. Lord Voldemort, I'm happy because summer vacation is coming soon, but I'm curious, when you were at your strongest, could you leave Earth? Roger smacked his lips, watching Voldemort's baffled expression. I can fly? Fly? Fly off the Earth? Roger scoffed. Mr. Lord Voldemort, you're not living in the Middle Ages, are you? But I remember the book said you were born in this century. Shut up, Voldemort snapped, both enraged and humiliated. With magic at the tip of Roger's wand, he had to swallow his temper. Seeing that pure-blood ideology wouldn't sway this boy, he tried another tack, ambition and power. Roger, perhaps you don't agree with my ideals. But as a Slytherin, you must have ambition. Don't deny it, he coaxed, forcing patience. I'm your senior. I understand the mindset of a genius at this school. Who said I was going to deny it? Roger shook his head. Today's magical world is an antique. Look at the headmaster's office. There's none of the electrical age at all. Come on, it's almost the 21st century, and I can't even get a cold cola. Roger's disdain wasn't just for Hogwarts. It aimed square at Voldemort. No fizzy drink, no happiness. Voldemort surprised himself with a laugh. He didn't fear disagreement. He feared apathy. A desire to overturn the whole magical world? Splendid. Ambition pleased him. Join me, Roger. Help me get unicorn blood. I will lead all wizards to glory, he revealed, but in doing so exposed his weakness. In his soul state, he could only possess other bodies and leech their life. Quirrell's vitality was nearly gone. Unicorn blood was what kept him breathing. You'll stand by me, gain supreme power and glory. Then you can change the entire magical world. No one will stop you, not even Merlin. Kingly treatment. Courtiers bowing without being named, striding in with a sword. Listening to Voldemort's grand promises, images popped into Roger's head, and history's cautionary tales followed. Those who accepted such flattery often met tragic ends. If you think titles are empty, I can fix that now. Make you a Slytherin prefect, president of the student council, minister for magic. Is that all? Roger's flippant tone left Voldemort momentarily speechless. I'm already a shadow prefect of Slytherin. Do I need the title? The student council president? Heh, a man who uses a chicken feather as proof of authority. When I'm pleased, I'll call him president. When I'm not, I'll pat his face and make him step aside. Roger said it with confident arrogance. Wizards are judged by strength. Those without strength are only fit to be rats in a stinking ditch. Reputation and power have always been offshoots of strength. The law does not judge the victor. As for revolutionizing the magical world, with all due respect, Mr. Lord Voldemort, you're a good person. A good person? Me? Voldemort felt oddly unsettled by Roger's compliment. Yes, revolution needs noble ideals and self-sacrifice. Two things I lack. I'm a timid man. Timid? Voldemort barked. He had never seen such shameless brazenness. The boy mocked him, shouted his name, treated him as nothing. This was not fear. All right, Roger. Seeing hard methods fail, Voldemort switched to a sweeter bait. I'll admit you have ideas. Interested in the dark arts, the true dark arts, Horcrux creation? As far as I know, Hogwarts' restricted section is closed to young students. All Horcrux books were moved by Dumbledore into the headmaster's office. If you agree, I'll have Quirrell give you access at any time. I, the greatest dark wizard, can be your teacher. I'll teach you every dark craft you want, and personally guide you in learning any magic. Mr. Lord Voldemort. Roger watched Voldemort's eager expression and hesitated only to dampen his mood slightly. At Christmas time, I accidentally emptied a certain Ministry of Magic underground library, Occlumency, Secrets of Advanced Dark Arts, Forbidden Division. I have a lot of books at home. No need for the restricted section. The more titles Roger rattled off, the more Quirrell's composure crumbled. If you don't believe me, I can recite a passage about Horcruxes. Enough, Voldemort snapped. You don't need the dark arts. What about galleons? I have the Lestrange family vault key. Your mother was a Lestrange. How about their family key? Voldemort clung to that last hope, eyes alight with expectation. Is there 1,000,000 galleons? Roger glanced around Quirrell's headmaster's office and frowned. This place is too small. The money I have at Gringotts could flood the room. Alas, the goblins are too stingy. After exchanging so much currency, they shut down the exchange window permanently. Roger cursed with mock regret, as if annoyed he still had tens of billions of pounds and no use for them. Voldemort, if he had a heart left, would have felt it break. He looked at Roger like a relic from a backward era, a pauper begging for gold. His arrogance drained away. He shut his eyes and sighed like a dying man. If you tell Dumbledore, I will kill you, even if it costs Quirrell his life. The threat cleaved through the room. If Voldemort had anything left of menace, he displayed it. Don't worry, I won't tell Dumbledore. I swear to Merlin, Roger said with a smile. Now the balance shifted. It was his turn to set conditions. Mr. Lord Voldemort, I believe in equivalent exchange. First, a few small questions, which you, with your erudition, can surely answer. Of course, I am the finest graduate Hogwarts has ever produced. In matters of magic, and especially the dark arts, Dumbledore cannot compare to me. Roger saw Voldemort snort assent and asked the question he'd long wanted to hear answered. You certainly won't tell me how many Horcruxes you've made. Don't worry, I won't ask that. But why did you make Horcruxes? Immortality. Voldemort answered without hesitation. Immortality? As far as I know, you began researching Horcruxes while you were still at school, a teenager. Why were you so terrified of death then? Voldemort closed his eyes and gave no answer to the boy's persistent prodding. All right, it seems you fear death. Since you could make Horcruxes, you must know about the vile Herbo. Is he dead or alive? I don't know. Voldemort looked Roger in the eye and snorted. I'm not lying. Some say he died when he merged his soul. Others say he's living in seclusion. No one knows. I traveled all over Greece and couldn't find a trace of him, so I have reason to believe Herbo is dead. Roger sounded unconvinced by Voldemort's ambiguity. If Herbo were truly dead, why had Voldemort been frantic in creating Horcruxes to chase immortality? All right, then the third question. Can the consciousness of a Horcrux be erased so it becomes a pure magical tool? A cold light flashed in Voldemort's eyes. He had never considered the possibility of treating soul fragments that way, but the point wasn't so much the answer as the question itself. For a wizard, the answer and the method matter far less than the question itself. A truly incisive question can spark a revolution and turn the world upside down. Before Herbo, for instance, no one could even imagine the basilisk or the Horcrux. It has never happened, Lord Voldemort said coolly, watching the other man closely, trying to read his intent. Well, I thought I might be a clever assistant. Rogge smiled, not pressing the point. Still, he had learned something from those few words. If it had never happened, it could very well happen. Lord Voldemort, Rogge said, producing a small golden sphere, golden snitch number 101. Fancy little trinket, isn't it? Golden snitch? A quaint toy. You're right. It comes from Bowman Wright, centuries ago, the inventor of the snitch. I think there's something hidden inside, but I can't figure out how the mechanisms move. You ask a lot of questions. Voldemort's eyes glittered. He was amused and wary at once, wondering what game was afoot. Come, hold it closer. Wingardium Leviosa, Rogge said, and he watched Voldemort's expression fall. The noseless, ugly face betrayed nothing but scheming. Voldemort reached for the snitch and handled it with a practiced, almost reverent care. Good control. You could be a dark wizard yet, Voldemort said with a faint smile, unashamed that his ploy had been seen through. He examined the snitch closely. Goblin metal, exquisite design and construction. With deep knowledge, he quickly discerned the craft behind the device. 2 ways to access whatever's inside. 1, break it and risk ruining the contents. 2, consult goblin texts. The answer's in their books. Lord Voldemort, be more specific, Rogge prodded. Shouldn't a wizard learn on his own? Voldemort said with a sneer. Or have you become as unthinking as a Gryffindor? Tsk, your sharp tongue matches our head of Slytherin, Severus. Severus, heh, a brief, knowing sound. Then both men shifted into business. You've been asking questions, Rogge, Voldemort said. That was part of the bargaining, wasn't it? No, that was simple scholarly curiosity between Slytherin colleagues. Humph. Now Hogwarts academic exchanges cover Horcruxes? Aren't you supposed to value equivalent exchange? Of course it's equivalent. I decide what counts as equivalent. Heh, Rogge, you have a knack for the dark arts. Ignore the theatrics. I can help you steal unicorn blood, but you must give me what I want. And what is it you want? Voldemort's eyes sharpened, already scheming exchanges in his head. All the potion recipes you know, not the common ones, the rare, powerful brews. Rogge's voice was steady. All the potion recipes? You have a big appetite. Thank you, my appetite has always been considerable. Call me the dragon's belly if you like. Do you think I'm flattering you? Greedy little wizard, you know the proverb about a man's heart not being large enough to swallow an elephant? 3 bottles of unicorn blood. No, that's absurdly small. I, Lord Voldemort, have traveled throughout Europe. I know rare and potent potions. 10 bottles, and I'll teach you 30 recipes. 10. Snape will kill me if he finds out. 5 bottles, 50 recipes. Take it or leave it. Rogge shrugged and started to step back, as if to leave. Come back! Voldemort's tone snapped. He had not expected to be bargained with. He pulled in a breath and conceded. Agreed. There's more I can trade for unicorn blood, Voldemort added, thinking of other exchanges. Can you teach me Parseltongue? Rogge asked. He laughed hard. You want to be a Parselmouth? You don't have gaunt blood. It's innate. Lord Voldemort, your laugh is grating, Rogge said, tugging at his ear to signal for quiet. Yes, Parseltongue is innate, but that doesn't stop a wizard from imitating the sounds. Oh, you want a clumsy imitation? Voldemort scoffed. A sonorous mouth. What good is that? It can only mimic a single sentence. I don't need it for many sentences. Sound is vibration. If I record the sound waves of Parseltongue, I can reproduce the vibration. In other words, add a stylus to your big mouth and record the sound onto a medium. The Muggles already had such a thing, a phonograph, an antique instrument. Voldemort's tone mixed mockery with a grudging interest. Humph. Then why should I teach you? Voldemort bristled at the implication that he was old-fashioned. 5 bottles of unicorn blood will cover this. I think I don't need any more trades. Seems I'll have to sell you some knowledge, Rogge said. You? Sell me knowledge? Voldemort scoffed. When he dominated the magical world, Rogge's parents weren't even a thought. But Rogge was unruffled. He began to pace, weighing what to offer that would matter. Lord Voldemort, why do you think Herbo merged his soul? Rogge asked. The books call Herbo despicable and say he reformed, but a dark wizard reforming. Do you believe that? A flicker of interest crossed Voldemort's face. Go on. Herbo was a genius who pursued immortality. The records say he split his soul to make Horcruxes, but splitting doesn't produce immortality, merging does. Continue, Voldemort urged, suddenly a touch anxious. If Rogge was right, everything Voldemort believed could be misdirected. Is it possible the basilisk was a Horcrux, a living Horcrux? Rogge suggested. He thought of the fragment of soul lodged in Harry's forehead, a ticking ember. Imagine creating a powerful magical creature and binding a soul fragment to it. The soul coexists within the creature. When the human body fails, the wizard transfers his principal soul into the creature, using it as a new host. Voldemort's mind raced with the implications. He mapped out the idea aloud. Create a powerful magical being. Make it your Horcrux. Let your soul dwell with it until you are ready. Then abandon your fragile human shell and invest your main soul in the creature. The soul lives in the Horcrux, and then you use that vessel to consume another body. He spoke fast, intoxicated by the possibility. A wizard's body is mortal. The soul can be eternal. Separate them deliberately, and the soul can change bodies like changing houses. This doesn't just repair a fragmented soul, it buys you the creature's vigor. Voldemort licked his lips and looked at Rogge as if regarding a rare and valuable object. Rogge, your perspective is sharp, original, unbound by ordinary wizarding assumptions. Join me, child. You were born for greatness. Lord Voldemort, don't get carried away, Rogge reminded him smoothly. We were talking business, remember? First 5 chapters. How many more I can churn out depends on my typing speed. I forgot. Haha, but I already know Herbo's experimental method. Sorry, looks like you've lost your leverage. Really? Lord Voldemort's calm tone made Rogge Travis sit up straighter. Had he missed something important? Basilisk. Ha ha ha. I happen to know a basilisk. Want to know where it is? Lord Voldemort, interrupting others is a very bad habit. Please be mindful, Rogge Travis said with a frown, then added quietly, I also know the basilisk you mean, the one in the Chamber of Secrets at Hogwarts, the pet of Slytherin himself. Voldemort's expression flickered, but Rogge didn't let him react. He leaned closer. Mr. Lord Voldemort, are you certain your current condition would be enough to subdue the soul of a 1,000-year-old basilisk? Perhaps you'll be swallowed by it, Voldemort said. Hiss, why not try? Rogge provoked. Try? I admire your courage. Perhaps you should graduate wearing gold and red robes, Voldemort shot back. Damn it, don't compare me to those idiotic lions, Rogge snapped. Calm down, teach me Parseltongue, and I'll tell you how to hatch a basilisk. Hatch a basilisk? Voldemort scrutinized him. Could this little wizard have found Herbo's lab in Europe? All right, Rogge Travis, tell me. Tell you after you teach me Parseltongue. Humph, what if you trick me? I can tell you the key ingredient, a rooster's egg. A rooster's egg? Are you joking? Voldemort's voice dripped disdain. Believe it or not. All right, I'll teach you Parseltongue. 3 days. How much you learn depends on your luck. 3 days? Acceptable. Voldemort nodded. His preparations for stealing the Philosopher's Stone were almost complete. Rogge's eyes glittered with another idea. Mr. Lord Voldemort, interested in selling the Lestrange family vault to me? Voldemort's mouth twitched. Fair trade. And I'm curious, why is the Lestrange family's vault key in your possession? Rogge watched him. Something about that vault felt significant. If I remember correctly, you're the last male of the Gaunt family, aren't you? Gaunt. Voldemort's expression became complicated at the name. As master of the Death Eaters, it's normal for servants to offer treasures. The Lestrange vault was offered by Bellatrix. Bella? Rogge grinned. I didn't expect you to have a taste for green hats. You and Boss Cow have the same hobby. Voldemort didn't understand the joke, but he felt the mockery. If your knowledge interests me, I can give you the vault key. Don't worry, it's a version you haven't heard of, the transformation between basilisk and wizard and the Lich's phylactery, especially the latter. That's knowledge not even recorded in the oldest magic. Commonly regarded as fabrication, Voldemort allowed. Tell me. No, Mr. Lord Voldemort, you are too clever. Either refuse without learning a word or agree to hand me the vault. The key is hidden in the Hogshead bar. Give me the key, or say no. Damn little wizard. Fine. The key is in the Chamber of Secrets in Slytherin's domain. The chamber's entrance is in the girl's bathroom where Myrtle died. Rogge shook his head. Voldemort clearly wasn't going to hand over the vault key willingly. He stood, bowed lightly, and said something in a strange, guttural cadence. Grod Noffel Gars Volp Ro Grod. What? Voldemort blinked. Rogge took a cautious step back and cast Expecto Patronum, just in case. Voldemort's lips twitched with a rare smugness. An uneducated fellow. This is goblin language, he said. It means to give you the key and open the vault. Go to Gringotts and find Gilderoy. Say that phrase to him and he will give you the key. Or you could find Bellatrix. She can open the vault with her wand. Can you say it again? Humph. Listen carefully. Grod Nafel. The goblin words sounded like a scrape of stone and clacking tones. Rogge memorized it on the second try, but he still wrote the phrase down in his notebook. Are you going to check a dictionary too? Voldemort asked. Bingo. You guessed right. Rogge's cautiousness irked Voldemort, but he refrained from snapping. Instead, curiosity took over. Tell me about the basilisk wizard transformation and the lich's phylactery. Don't worry. I'm an honest young man, commonly known as trustworthy, Rogge said, smiling. I don't know how a basilisk and a wizard transform, he continued, making sure Voldemort didn't expect a con. But I can give you a clue. The blood curse. The blood curse? Voldemort mused. The topic stirred something in him, an unsolved mystery in the magical world. Yes, the Arcanus Wizard Circus once had a performer who could transform into a serpent and back into a human. Maledictus, Rogge said. I know who you mean. Nagini, Newt, and Beerbon's friend. Is she still with Hogwarts? I only provide knowledge, not intelligence, Voldemort replied. Since you are the Dark Lord, I'll tell you. Nagini was captured and returned to the circus. Voldemort's smile widened, but he let the implication hang. He wanted Rogge to continue. Rogge obliged. Mr. Lord Voldemort, as a renowned wizard, I believe you can reverse a blood curse. As for a lich's phylactery, that's a brilliant piece of magic invented by mages who wanted immortality. Rogge explained with calm relish. They resented the limits of mortal life, so they devised a way to become liches, undead spellcasters who don't need food or sleep, who keep all memories and talents. First, the person creates a phylactery. Then their soul is stripped from the body and sealed in the phylactery. The body can be destroyed. As long as the phylactery remains, they can be restored. He watched Voldemort. Horcruxes are a crude imitation compared to a true phylactery. But you already know you can't quite become a lich in the usual way. There is another route. Rogge's voice dropped conspiratorially. You can sign a contract with certain entities. One of them is death. Let death transform you into a lich. Death? Voldemort repeated as if tasting the word. Whether death truly existed was something he'd never proven. If you could find it, truly, you could be immortal. The thought lit a fever in Voldemort. Horcruxes or liches, both seemed suddenly within reach with Rogge's knowledge. Rogge Travis, join me. We can walk toward eternal life together, he urged repeatedly, growing more urgent with each plea. I'm still young. Let's talk about it when I'm old and can't walk, Rogge said, smiling. He had no desire to be an undead skeleton at his age. With a polite nod, he took his leave of Voldemort and the man with the turban. Master, shouldn't we? Quirrell began, his voice edged. Shut up, idiot. I'm tired. I need to rest, Rogge snapped over his shoulder. Yes, yes, master. Quirrell hurried to oblige. When the face at the back of his head fell silent, he wrapped it again with a strip of cloth. Outside Quirrell's office, Rogge went straight to find Snape. He had promised only one thing, not to tell Dumbledore, but he hadn't promised Snape silence. He found the potions master and said bluntly, Professor, give me a few bottles of unicorn blood. Snape's frown deepened. You saw that person? Lord Volde, Rogge began. Since you've seen him, don't say his name anymore, at least not now. Snape cut Rogge off sharply. His name is warded with a tracking spell. If anyone speaks it, he can sense the signal. Oh, Rogge thought for a moment, then grinned. Professor, if every muggle in the world shouted his name at once, do you think you know whose head would explode? What nonsense. Snape's glare made Rogge clamp his mouth shut. Powerful wizards put thresholds on spells. Filtering and barrier charms would have been applied long ago. Rogge let the thought go and followed Snape to his storeroom. In a small, locked compartment, the professor kept rare medicinal ingredients and potions he'd brewed over the years. A millennium-old snake gallbladder sealed in amber, a vial of glowing veritaserum, a bloody human-faced beast's heart, even a claw preserved in ice. The air in the cramped space hummed with the scent of rarities and the faint tang of magic. Snape ran a hand along the shelves, a look of quiet pride on his face. Unicorn blood. How many bottles does he want? Snape unlocked a tiny cabinet and pulled it open. Nearly 100 crystal jars sat inside, each exhaling a cold, preservative breath. Silver-white liquid shimmered in the glass with a sacred, luminous sheen. Every potions master is a rich man, Rogge thought, astonished. The professor's rumpled appearance belied a horde of things that would be frenziedly snapped up if they ever reached the open market. I brokered a deal with you-know-who, Rogge said. I'll help him steal unicorn blood, and he'll give me valuable potion formulas in return. He wants 5 bottles. Professor, could you spare 2 more? He added, thinking aloud, I'll need some for Nagini's experiments as well. Snape didn't refuse. He took 7 bottles, shut the cabinet, then opened 5 and injected a mercury-like liquid into them. I found that unicorn blood has a peculiar effect on the blood of blood beastmen. I want to study it. Rogge chose to trust him. Blood beastmen, they're dangerous. Snape cautioned him as he handed over the bottles. His fingers brushed another shelf and found cabinets labeled werewolf and vampire. Werewolves and vampires are transmitted through blood too. In a way, they're blood curses, perhaps even the result of ancient wizard experiments. Werewolves and vampires? Rogge nodded. He pictured transformations of humans and other creatures, different manifestations of the same root disease. The vampires in Snape's specimens weren't stately noble figures. They looked more like enlarged, grotesque versions of Gollum, wrinkled skin, thin wings, obscene and repellent. Do you think they all came from the same experiment? Rogge wondered out loud. Failed test subjects became these blood beastmen. The ones that were only half successful became werewolves, and the ones that succeeded too much became vampires. Where would the truly successful ones fall? Animagi. Rogge offered the word with a little flourish. Snape's usually impassive face showed a hint of surprise. That's an unexpected answer, but it has merit. Rogge felt a flicker of vindication. Everything involved animals in some form. There could be a connection. Snape, however, adjusted the ordering of Rogge's theory. He pulled out jars labeled werewolf brains and vampire hearts. The specimens were revolting. Vampires are failed subjects, werewolves are unstable experiments, and blood beastmen can be successful test subjects, Snape explained when Rogge looked puzzled. And animagi, registered animagi, there are only 7 in the entire British wizarding world. Even counting those unregistered, the number wouldn't exceed 20. What about blood beastmen? Rogge asked. Snape handed the specimens back and led Rogge further into the room. The blood curse is transmitted matrilineally. Their daughters turn into true beasts as they age, but before they lose themselves, they behave like natural animagi. Rogge's eyes widened. That would explain a lot. So you're saying you don't need talent, potions, or spells, just a curse on the bloodline to gain the ability to transform. Snape sounded almost wistful. It has terrible side effects, but yes, it's a crude shortcut to transformation. So blood beastmen were the earliest test subjects? Rogge guessed. On the contrary, Snape said. Blood beastmen were most likely the very first subjects. He produced a sheaf of notes on animagi research. Think of it. James Potter, Sirius Black, both were animagi. I, who call myself the Half-Blood Prince, am not one. Ancient wizards experimented extensively with animal transformation. The blood curse was an initial step. Animagus development was a refinement. What does an animagus do? Snape prompted. Transforms into animals, Rogge replied. Ordinary animals, Snape corrected. Ancient wizards would not have been satisfied with that. Their ambition would have been to become magical creatures, creatures with special powers. Like a phoenix? Rogge asked, and Snape's eyes snapped to him. Dangerous idea, Snape warned sharply. He suspected Rogge was hinting at Fawkes, though he had no proof. If we're right, their experiments ultimately failed. Werewolves and vampires escaped as dangerous, corrupted results, dark creatures of the magical world. Current theory says wizards and magical creatures are fundamentally different in how they use magic. Wizards can't transform into magical creatures without unpredictable consequences, Snape continued. Unpredictable results? Death? Rogge asked, curious, but Snape didn't answer directly. Werewolves get afflicted under a full moon and are vulnerable to silver. Vampires, nearly immortal, burn in sunlight. Those are the kinds of unpredictable results we see. He changed the subject and motioned Rogge to pour the unicorn blood into test tubes. Rogge opened the lids, extracted biological samples from the werewolf and vampire specimens, and cut them into tiny pieces. These creatures possess magic, Snape said as he placed the tissue into the tubes. Their existence shows the theory is incomplete. A loophole in a theory proves the theory is narrow. There must be a more advanced model, one that would allow wizards to become magical creatures. Unicorn blood can restore life, Rogge offered. Maybe it can rebalance whatever goes wrong. They watched as the fresh unicorn blood did what Snape had hoped. In the test tubes, the silver-white liquid quickly shifted to red and then to a blackened hue. The samples took on a lifeless, drained appearance. A promising line of inquiry, Snape said. He had expected failure, but the result at least proved unicorn blood interacted with those samples in a noteworthy way. He looked at Rogge with an assessing expression. Rogge's face fell. Professor, don't look at me like that. I don't think I'm ready for this work. Is that so? Snape's voice was cool. In that case, perhaps I was a fool to give you unicorn blood. No. It takes time, and I'll need your help. Rogge snatched the jar from Snape and agreed to take on the research project. Snape tossed a key to him without a second thought. Your potions graduation project. Don't disappoint me. He turned and left as if the cupboard contained nothing but clay pots and dirt instead of rare, expensive ingredients. Rogge watched his retreating back with gratitude. Snape never skimped on knowledge or resources for talented students, but he did have no patience for incompetence. With the latter, he was merciless. Rogge had earned his tutelage and, with it, had to accept the price, relentless criticism and cutting ridicule whenever he slipped. After a year under Snape, Rogge's skill had risen to that of an advanced potions practitioner. Owls and newts would be no problem. Snape knew the assignment was difficult. He himself could not promise it would be solved in 6 years, but it would raise Rogge's level and keep his potions class from becoming a meaningless exercise. Don't worry, Professor. I'll finish it, Rogge vowed inwardly. He intended the research results as a graduation gift. Back in the room of requirement with the unicorn blood secured, Rogge adjusted the sonorous mouth and thought about whether Dumbledore had been an animagus. The Dumbledore family always seemed to have a phoenix at their side. Whenever a Dumbledore faced trouble, a phoenix appeared. He remembered the basilisk from the Chamber of Secrets and how Fawkes had wounded it. If Dumbledore had been an animagus, what might his animal form be? A phoenix? A mouse? He shook off the speculation. For now, there were better things to do. These days, he could drain knowledge from Voldemort like squeezing water from a sponge, and he couldn't afford to miss the chance. Even the dream of getting hold of the Philosopher's Stone crossed his mind. A wizard should have ambitions. In the last stretch before exams, Hermione and Daphne wanted to revise with him, but Rogge was never to be found. He'd given up ordinary revision in favor of studying goblin lore and visiting Quirrell's office to practice Parseltongue, using Voldemort's voice through the sonorous mouth. As the holiday approached, their goals diverged. The cooperation wasn't pleasant, but it worked. Voldemort dragged his feet, however, and by the end had taught only 1,000 sentences. Enough for basic conversation, but nothing more. Rogge never handed over all the unicorn blood at once. He left one jar after each day's transaction. Rogge, whose side will you be on? Voldemort asked with burning eyes. Unicorn blood did restore some vigor. Having drunk 2 vials, the face on the back of Quirrell's head was clearer, almost 3-dimensional. Rogge still didn't know what Snape had added to the blood, but so far, Voldemort had detected nothing. The winning side. Rogge checked the black plastic card, mouthed the words through the sonorous device, and after several comparisons, put the card away and handed over the day's jar. At first, Voldemort had doubted that the device could reproduce Parseltongue. When Rogge spoke, the brass mouth only opened and closed. a thin silver needle engraved unreadable patterns on a black card. But when Rogge rotated the playback knob, the entire passage was repeated perfectly, even the intonation matched. The proof made Voldemort believe Rogge had cracked Parseltongue. With those black cards and the sonorous mouth, any wizard could learn it in time. Good, good. It seems you'll stand with me without hesitation. Voldemort sounded convinced he would return as a king and once more rule the magical world. Mr. Lord Voldemort is confident, but the magical world won't let you do whatever you like. Rogge flattened him with a remark. Voldemort only laughed, drinking the blood with relish. Are you talking about Dumbledore? Heh, he's old. He doesn't belong to this era. I have taught you basic Parseltongue, Voldemort reminded him. By our agreement, you should now hand over the remaining vials and your knowledge. Rogge feigned surprise and put the black card into the slot. The sonorous mouth snapped into Madame Pince's prim cadence and snarled. That Quirrell. He makes every book smell of garlic. He stole into the restricted section and harmed those precious volumes. I must complain to the headmaster. Sorry, the volume was a little high, Rogge said and twisted the knob down. Voldemort's sneer didn't change. Both men trusted each other only as far as convenience allowed. I was looking for books about liches, Voldemort said blandly. He'd searched the library for books on liches and horcruxes without success and suspected Rogge might be hiding something. A fresh lie is hard to disprove. Rogge, I gave you the potion recipe. You only gave me 3 of the promised unicorn blood vials. Today is the deadline. Mr. Lord Voldemort, you haven't taught me well enough. Rogge sensed danger and backed away from compliance. He'd not lost sight of the truth. Voldemort, in his soul state, did not truly need blood. What fed him was Quirrell's life force. The blood was to keep Quirrell alive until they could seize the stone. Rogge couldn't afford a mistake. He slipped his wand beneath his sleeve and ran a quick simulation in his head. A rapid chain of possible outcomes. Tell Voldemort that a basilisk hatches from a toad, and he nods in understanding. Voldemort casts Imperio, and you become a Death Eater. You and Quirrell enter the Chamber of Secrets and fail to find the stone. You cast Sectum Sempra on Harry while he fights Quirrell. Harry is gravely hurt, and you are expelled. The mental reel stopped. He'd been careless. A recent lull had lowered his guard. Rogge ran the scenario again and found a path out. He leaned forward, letting Voldemort hear an explanation that was half instruction, half misdirection. You must have read about hatching a basilisk in a library book, the idea that it needs a toad, for example. Rogge smiled, and Voldemort's expression shifted. Unease flickered across the face on the back of Quirrell's head. You mean the book is wrong? Voldemort asked. Both yes and no. Rogge adopted the tone of a teacher. Medieval breeders hid their methods. There were laws against breeding certain animals for experimentation. If you read the statutes about prohibiting certain domestications, you'd see clear prohibitions. Law. I never read those, Voldemort sneered. But you can always break a law. Dark wizards don't breed basilisks often because they're dangerous. Only a Parselmouth can control them. You'd have to be the one to acquire that control. Rogge stood up, eager. Mastering Parseltongue means mastering a basilisk. Imagine the advantage. He praised Voldemort extravagantly. The flattery pleased the Dark Lord. Charisma, Rogge could see, still drew followers to him. Ra went on, deliberately inserting gaps and odd details. That book wasn't lying so much as omitting vital points. The magic egg has special conditions, and not every day is suitable. From what I understand, the egg comes from a 7-year-old rooster, found on Sirius. Voldemort looked up sharply. The office door had been open. Rogge was gone. The talent for sensing danger? Voldemort snapped, annoyed. He should have acted when Rogge came in. Master, shall I fetch him? Quirrell offered. No, Voldemort dismissed him. If he's on the alert, he won't be found so easily. How are preparations at the Ministry? Acquiring the Philosopher's Stone was priority number 1. Once he regained power, there would be nowhere for that little wizard to hide. Master, Lucius is willing to help distract Dumbledore. Quirrell said, Ah, that smooth fellow. Voldemort's eyes sharpened. Quirrell, you didn't reveal my plans to him, did you? Without your permission, how could I? Quirrell prostrated himself, trembling at the suspicion. Is that so? Then let's see how it goes. Voldemort breathed a chilling laugh, and the office fell into a slow, cold silence. Chapter 95. Exam Week. The weather grew hotter by the day. There wasn't even a fan in the classroom. Rogge sat with his examination quill and quickly began answering. Daphne had told him the quills were charmed to prevent cheating. No conjuring or subtle enchantments would slip by. The questions on the paper were basic, just fundamental magical knowledge, and Rogge finished well before most of his classmates. He felt no need to cheat at all. In Professor Flitwick's Charms exam, Rogge unquestionably earned the top mark. His pineapple, an odd but cheerful companion, danced a rhythmic tap routine, its bright little steps drawing smiles and making a few students unconsciously sway and hop over their desks to follow the beat. When Professor McGonagall announced her exam, a hush fell over the room, and many faces fell. A live mouse sat in a small cage on the podium. The task was to transform it into a snuff box. "If you kept up with every bit of homework," McGonagall said, her glasses flashing, "this would not be difficult." Most of the students lowered their heads guiltily. No one had expected such an important exam question so soon. Everyone remembered it had originally been set as extra practice for Rogge and Hermione. "Daphne, you must have practiced, right? Show me your technique." Daphne nudged Rogge uneasily. "You know I don't do extra practice unless it's required." Rogge replied with a shake of his head. Daphne turned to Hermione instead. Hermione Granger was the professor's model student, diligent, punctual, and always the first to finish assignments. The school teachers admired her, even if her peers privately called her a bookworm and a tattletale. Hermione stepped up with calm precision. She flicked her wand, her incantation clear and confident, and the mouse in the cage melted into an exquisite, perfectly formed snuff box. "Perfect transfiguration, Miss Granger," McGonagall said approvingly and marked an O for outstanding beside her name. Ron limped to the front next, wand crooked and uncertain. "Come on, Ron," Harry urged from the side. Ron swallowed, took a breath, and cast. The result was odd. His snuff box resembled something out of a nightmare. Long whiskers, 4 little legs, and a thin, twitching tail poked from its base. Rogge glanced over and muttered under his breath about Weasley's knack for making things creepier than they'd ever been meant to be. Malfoy couldn't resist a barb. "Weasley, your snuff box is going to start squeaking, is it?" The class burst into laughter. McGonagall wrote a P for poor next to Ron's name. "Not bad, Mr. Potter," she said to Harry and marked an E for exceeds expectations. Harry pouted. He and Ron had been working together, yet the difference in their transfiguration was stark. Ron sulked at the bottom of the list, while most of their classmates did well, and overall, Gryffindor passed. When it came to Slytherin, McGonagall's expression tightened for a moment. Aside from Goyle and Crabbe, most of Slytherin earned E's, and Rogge and Daphne unsurprisingly received O's. The slate of Slytherin results outshone Gryffindor's, and McGonagall felt mixed emotions. Pleased as a transfiguration teacher, but uneasy as Gryffindor's head. She rolled up the score sheet, imagining Snape's smug face when he heard. She resolved to keep a distance from him for a while and to improve things in Transfiguration next year. Soon enough, Severus Snape swept into the classroom. His exam was announced in his usual flat, cutting tone. "Your task is simple. Brew a forgetfulness potion within the allotted time. I trust you remember how to do it." Rogge smiled inwardly. Of course Snape would make a point of that. He finished quickly. "Done," he announced. "Only 5 minutes have passed," Snape said, lips curving into a faint sneer. At Rogge's voice, his gait lightened. He strode past Harry and held up the potion Rogge had produced. "Perfect color and quality," he declared, unreservedly praising his own student and writing a large, flourishing O for outstanding. If he could have given more than full marks, he would have. Then Snape turned to the rest of the room, his voice thin. "Did you drink your forgetfulness potion before the exam? Have you forgotten that time is passing? Or do you think I will pity you and grant extra time?" The room fell silent. Heads bent, and students hurried at their cauldrons. Snape loomed behind Harry like a dark, watchful shadow. Harry felt the cold of the professor's gaze, but forced himself to focus, measuring, stirring, and adding ingredients precisely. The pressure did not break him, though it rattled Ron, who made a string of small mistakes under the scrutiny. When Snape collected Harry's potion, he barely glanced at it. "Average," he said, and tossed it back in a casual, dismissive flick. Harry tried to comfort Ron. "Snape gave you a P," he reminded him, but the remark only deepened Ron's gloom. "We've studied together all this time." Ron muttered and, crestfallen, walked out of the classroom without looking back. Hermione watched him go, perplexed. From her view of Ron, he didn't care about marks that much. "What do you think's bothering him?" she asked. Rogge came up beside her and offered an analysis. "Imagine being inseparable from your roommate. You do everything together, maybe even share a dorm and help each other out. But then at finals, you only scrape a pass while your friend gets exceeds expectations or outstanding. Wouldn't you feel resentful, angry, cheated?" Hermione's face flickered with understanding. Before she could say more, Harry, having caught what Rogge was suggesting, snapped at him. "Don't try to drive a wedge between me and Ron." He shot off after Ron down the corridor. Later, when the flying exam was announced, the students cheered. This was the time to show off. Though Rogge and Hermione looked less confident, neither was especially talented on a broom. Madame Hooch surveyed their eager faces and felt a pang of worry for some and pride for others. "All right," she said. "The exam venue is the Quidditch pitch. There are 25 hoops set up. You must fly through them in order and then return. The faster you do it, the better your score. Understood?" "Understood." The students replied in unison and then rushed toward the pitch, brooms at the ready. Chapter 96, Far Ahead, 105. "Roger, are all academic overachievers bad at sports?" Malfoy asked, clutching his broom as he hopped over to Roger. "Did you get the boxing gloves I sent you for Christmas?" Roger took a breath and looked at Malfoy's smug face. "Of course I did. Bring them next time, and I'll teach you what sports are about." Roger rested a hand on Malfoy's shoulder. The other boy's shoulders immediately drooped, and he began to plead. "Malfoy, Slytherin's flying results depend on you." "Don't worry," Malfoy snapped, raising his broom and fixing his gaze on Harry Potter in the distance. "I won't lose to him." Even so, Malfoy couldn't deny Harry's natural flying talent. Roger thought that if Harry ever turned professional, he could become legendary. Malfoy cursed at his broken broom, kicked it aside, and under Madame Hooch's death stare, picked it up obediently. Roger, lugging a huge broom like a janitor, muttered that flying was only taught in first year. But the Quidditch matches still meant cheering for their house, and he swore he'd never touch a broom again if he could help it. Their last class had been History of Magic, the epitome of rote learning. Professor Binns simply read from the textbook and never explained the bloody, complicated reasons behind the wars and rebellions. The exams that followed were as dull and soporific as his lectures. When the papers were finally turned in, the students erupted in cheers. Hogwarts felt ready for the holidays. The results wouldn't be announced for another week, which meant freedom for now. "Holiday." Daphne threw her book up and spun around. "Any plans for the summer?" Hermione, already thinking about how many books to take and what to preview, was starting to plan a scholarly break. Roger, by contrast, said simply, "Figure out a way to make money." "Make money?" Hermione and Daphne said together. The Shadow Apparition House's products were selling well across the wizarding world. They assumed Roger wasn't short of cash. When he'd helped develop the instant magical camera, Hermione and Ileana had also pitched in. After the launch, they'd all received a cut of the profits. Hermione, a little set up financially, didn't think Roger needed money. Roger sighed. "Rebuilding the house will cost a lot. Even cutting everything down, we're short by hundreds of thousands." "Rebuilding the house?" Hermione's brow furrowed. "Madame Jessica told me their manor was almost a ruin." Daphne nodded. This was a serious expense. Harry, standing at the corner of the corridor, called softly to Hermione and waved. "I'm leaving," she said apologetically to Roger, and he nodded. "Be careful," he told her, then watched Hermione go with a look that made her frown. Daphne, always quick to plan fun, brightened. "Roger, let's go to Hogsmeade tonight to celebrate the end of exams." "Hogsmeade?" Roger smirked. "Do you have a way past the gates?" "Of course, I found a secret passage that leads to Honeydukes." "Not tonight," Roger said. He'd seen Harry and the others heading to Hagrid's hut, and whatever cursed luck always seemed to attach itself to defense against the dark arts threatened to start. "If the head catches us, we might each lose 100 points." "What a shame. The head's a Gryffindor, so he probably would," Daphne sighed. Slytherin's house points were currently the highest in the school. After the house cup, I'll buy you butterbeer. They chatted as they returned to the Slytherin common room. At 11 that night, while the others celebrated, Roger slipped out using a disillusionment charm. Phew, I can't miss tonight's big event, he told himself. Miss what? Daphne asked from a shadowed part of the corridor. Roger nearly jumped. Heh! Daphne, you scared me! He relaxed when she stepped out. Are Harry and the others up to something? You looked off this afternoon, she pressed, looking like she wanted to follow. Just out for a stroll, Roger said weakly. Do you think I'd believe that? Daphne demanded. All right, I'll tell you. Roger sighed. Remember the corridor on the right side of the 4th floor the head warned us about at the start of term? The corridor he told us to stay away from? You mean? Daphne's eyes widened. Are they going to defy him and go in there? There must be a secret, Roger said. You know, the Philosopher's Stone. Daphne's face brightened. Take me with you. If you don't, I'll tell the head. She grabbed his sleeve, determined. Roger knew she'd follow anyway, so he relented. You can come, but you do exactly as I tell you and don't run off. No problem, Daphne promised, thrilled at the idea of a legendary treasure that granted immortality. Quick, Roger hissed, and before she could protest, he cast a disillusionment charm and bundled her back into her dormitory. He didn't want her risking expulsion. Then from a courtyard window, he raised his wand and sent a burst of firework into the sky, brief, red, a prearranged signal. Bubble, he whispered as the flare bloomed. Don't fail me. Later, the door hidden at the end of the 4th floor corridor stood open. Inside, a 3-headed dog padded and snarled at the trapdoor. Its breath stank like a troll's. Roger wrinkled his nose. Reparo, he muttered, repairing a crushed harp. The movement unexpectedly ended his invisibility and drew the Cerberus's attention. He backed away fast, knowing even Snape had suffered trying to deal with that beast. Thinking quickly, he flew into action. Magical hand, he chanted. An enchanted hand lifted the harp and played. The lullaby filled the room. The Cerberus's barking slowed, its lids drooped, and with a great rumbling sigh it dropped into a doze. You dog, Roger muttered, stepping over it and giving one of its heads a solid kick. Then he cast Wingardium Leviosa and slowly lifted the sleeping creature until it drifted aside. He slid down the trapdoor and dropped into the dim chamber. Incendio! He breathed, and flames licked at the hanging devil's snare. The black tentacles retracted instantly, flinching from the light and heat. Roger muttered, "Thank you, Professor Sprout," as he moved on, making his way through the darkness. In the next hall, thousands of clever keys darted and fluttered, guarding the door ahead. They could turn into sharp little swords when grabbed. Roger didn't see any flying broom to be used here, but he had other tricks. Engorgio, then he said in a broad sweep. The clever keys swelled, their wings became too heavy to beat, and the first ones began to fall. The clatter of keys striking stone filled the chamber. Grinning, Roger plucked one of the fallen keys, pushed it into the lock, and twisted. With a satisfying snap, the lock gave way, and the key broke. He paused for a breath, listening to the echoing clink of metal as the way opened ahead. Roger knew this was only the beginning, but for tonight, he'd gotten past the first line of defenses. Alohomora. Roger tossed the broken key aside and cast another unlocking spell at the lock. Nothing happened. His expression hardened. A counter curse? You can't stop my path, he muttered. He stepped back, flicked his wand, and used Wingardium Leviosa to seize the keys scattered on the floor. Like a storm of knives, keys shot at the lock one after another. 1, 2, 100, 200. They smashed and splintered under his control. The lock filled with holes until finally a large breach punched through and the door opened on its own. Maybe there's still time. Roger dashed forward, praying Harry hadn't been finished by then. Roger, is that you? Stop! In the wreckage of the wizard's chess, Ron was propped against a shattered night piece, wand in hand, eyes wary. Where's Hermione? She went to help Harry, Roger said. Ron's face went pale as he realized something and quickly clamped his mouth shut. So it's not over yet. Roger nodded. Behind the passage lay Snape's potion riddle, answers practically scrawled on the bottles, if Roger's judgment was right. He suspected the so-called poisons might be harmless anyway. You play wizard's chess well, he added. Ignoring the warning in Ron's stance, Roger approached the fallen queen. He aimed his wand and said, Petrificus Talus. The massive chess piece straightened back into its human-like form. Roger kicked it aside. You expect chess to be played any other way? Ron protested. Roger shook his head. Let me tell you something. The weak follow the rules. The strong make them. Petrificus Totalis. Expelliarmus. Roger pivoted and blasted Ron's wand from his fingers. Weasleys are always full of courage, even when they look pathetic and foolish. No one ever told you we have dueling rules? Ambushing someone from behind, it's not proper wizard's conduct, Ron protested, scrambling for honor. Roger stepped closer, ignoring the point. You damn little Death Eater. You should never have been let out. You belong in Azkaban forever. Ron cursed and went still, face blanching. You know me? Under Roger's hard stare, Ron trembled, but to buy time for Harry, he forced himself to answer. Of course I know you. We met a lady on the train the year we started school. And then, Roger moved among the rubble, kicking debris aside. We didn't recognize her at first. Then my mum wrote, said she was Jessica from the Daily Prophet. Continue, Ron managed. Roger's voice went cold as he tilted his head. She said her son started the same year and had a snowy owl, like Harry's Hedwig. So you knew who I was? Roger grabbed Ron and shoved him, then punched him hard. You're brave and loyal. I'll give you credit. You're Harry's most reliable helper. But what if I kill you? Ron blurted, trying to sound fierce. You dare. His bravado collapsed into a frightened shout. If you kill me, Headmaster Dumbledore won't let you. Headmaster? Roger scoffed inwardly. If Dumbledore had rushed back, if he were here, perhaps he had gone below to watch Harry fight. Or perhaps Lord Voldemort himself. When he was professor, Hogwarts still had student deaths. One more won't change much. Maybe you'll keep Myrtle company. He flicked his wand. Sectum Sempra. The curse screamed past Ron's ear and tore a hole through the chessboard. Roger! Hermione came racing out of the passage and grabbed his arm. Roger, no! She clutched his wrist, holding his wand-bearing hand tight. Don't worry, I wouldn't go to Azkaban over a fool. I'm only scaring him. Roger steadied his hand with a pat on hers, signaling he wouldn't act without reason. Ron gasped. Relief briefly lit his face. Hermione's presence meant Harry might still get the Philosopher's Stone. Levicorpus, Roger said wandlessly, and Ron went tumbling up by the ankles until he hung upside down from the ceiling. Roger? Hermione, this is between me and Weasley, Roger said coolly, ordering her not to interfere. If you let him down, I might hit him every time I see him. Hermione looked annoyed. What had Ron done to make Roger this angered? She asked. Where is Harry? He's gone to get the Philosopher's Stone. There's fire blocking the way. You can't get through, Ron hiccuped. Hermione, don't forget, Snape was my professor. You don't think these obstacles are ordinary, do you? Roger said, then strode into the passage. Hermione frowned as she thought about the obstacles they'd already encountered. The three-headed dog outside had been Hagrid's, the devil's snare in the underground trap was Sprout's, the keys had Madame Hooch's signature, Snape had set the potions. Who, then, had put in the chessboard and the troll? She looked at the chess pieces, normal-sized figures, not the enchanted giants she'd imagined, and covered her mouth in surprise. Quick, get him down! Ron kicked and squirmed, blood rushing to his head. Aren't you afraid he'll hit you again? He wouldn't dare. If he laid a hand on me, my brothers wouldn't forgive him. Ron yelled, a stubborn bravado hiding his dizziness. Hermione hesitated, then stepped into the passage with Roger. The blaze that had barred the way vanished, leaving water stains across the floor. Is Aguamenti that strong? She said, kneeling to examine the damp stone, feeling the residual magic pulse. And they said everything would be solved with potions? Oomph! Below, in the dark chamber, flames licked. Professor Quirrell was draped over Harry, hands at his throat. He didn't look a commanding man ordinarily, but when he moved to strangle someone, he became terrifyingly purposeful. Harry's passive protective magic, however, did its work. When Harry shoved his hand against Quirrell's face, the skin blistered and Quirrell screamed, tearing back in agony. Roger's footsteps had not disturbed the struggle. He frowned and watched. The dark arts thrummed in the air. Instinct made him guard against immediate danger. Expecto Patronum. A spectral raven burst from him and settled on his shoulder. Quirrell collapsed into dust, his robes dropping to the floor as if the body inside had disintegrated. Roger scanned the chamber for Lord Voldemort. Roger? Harry had already picked up the Philosopher's Stone, and from Quirrell's last words had learned the truth. Snape had not been Quirrell's accomplice. Careful, Roger warned. A black shadow lunged. Roger threw up a shield charm and twisted aside as the dark shape passed through Harry. It was a thin, agonized voice, the soul of Lord Voldemort, flowing through and around them, but the Horcrux within Quirrell, surprisingly, had not perished in that instant. Roger's Raven Patronus fixed its gaze on the mist and flapped, barring it from advancing. The voice screamed, "Damn you, Harry, and you, Roger, we will meet again." The shriek faded, and the shadow fled in panic. Phew. Roger stepped forward and picked up the Philosopher's Stone that had tumbled to the steps. The blood-red crystal was darker at the edges, a little scorched. He weighed it in his hand, and then, without hesitation, began to run a quick simulation in his head. Pick up the Philosopher's Stone. Absorb a massive amount of life energy. Headmaster Dumbledore arrives, checks Harry's condition, and gestures for you to hand the Philosopher's Stone to him. Simulation interrupted. A panel pulsed before his vision with a single line. Life magic crystal detected, containing a huge reserve of life energy. Absorb? Chapter 98. Results released in advance. Life energy? A life magic crystal? Rogge stared at the red stone in his hand, stunned. The Philosopher's Stone could grant its user immortality. Maybe the rumors weren't entirely baseless. Nicholas Flamel had lived in 14th century France during the Black Death, when something like 25 million people perished in 7 years. Holding the crystal, Rogge let his mind wander to dark possibilities. With so many deaths at once, even death must have been overwhelmed. Perhaps the Philosopher's Stone had been born out of such a disaster. According to the simulation, Dumbledore had asked him for the stone. Its energy changes didn't alter its outward appearance. Rogge tightened his grip and told the panel silently, "Absorb." It felt like a black hole opened in his palm. The stone's energy surged into the panel at once. A long energy bar appeared and shot upward. "Rogge, what happened to Harry?" Hermione hurried down the stairs, her face full of worry. Dumbledore dropped down a moment later, carrying Harry. Only after checking that Harry wasn't in mortal danger did the headmaster exhale in relief. "What happened? Why were you in the 4th floor corridor? I told you all not to go there." "It was Quirrell." "No, Lord Voldemort," Rogge corrected himself and related what he had seen. "Quirrell tried to strangle him to get the stone, but Harry won in the end." "You know who is still alive?" Hermione gasped, even more shocked to learn Voldemort had possessed Quirrell. "What about Quirrell? If this pile of dirt counts." Rogge kicked at Quirrell's robes, and Hermione jumped back onto a nearby bed. He stalled just long enough for the panel's progress bar to fill the rest of the way. Dumbledore's eyes were half-lidded, as if he'd been expecting this. "Headmaster, is this the Philosopher's Stone? It looks like an uncut red crystal." Rogge held the now empty shell where the stone had been and watched the bar flash full. "Yes." Dumbledore accepted the stone, examining it. "It can grant eternal life." "Eternal life? That's real? Even Merlin couldn't pull that off." Rogge smiled, then handed the stone over. Dumbledore breathed more easily and shifted his attention away from him. Rogge looked at the unconscious boy in the headmaster's arms. "Headmaster, is there some kind of spell on him? How could Harry have killed Quirrell with his bare hands?" "It was the power Harry's parents left to him, the power of love." Dumbledore did not elaborate. He set Harry down gently and motioned for them to follow. "The power of love?" Rogge suppressed a scoff. He would sooner believe pigs would fly than accept that love could defeat Lord Voldemort. If love was that effective, what was a wand for? "Is it some ancient spell?" he pressed. He'd felt the fluctuations of dark arts earlier. What he'd seen didn't seem like ordinary magic when Harry was physically attacking Quirrell. "Perhaps only Harry's parents knew," Dumbledore said, unwilling to say more. He led them back toward the chamber where the wizard's chess battle had taken place and released the Weasley who'd been in peril. "Rogge, attacking a classmate is against school rules." "Yes, Headmaster. I'll be more careful." Rogge nodded and accepted the admonition, though it felt like Dumbledore was deliberately changing the subject. He let his thoughts race instead. What could this power of love really be? Was it some kind of sacrificial protection? Harry would be staying with Aunt Petunia until he came of age. If a relative's bloodline could mask him from Voldemort, then in a strange way, the Dursleys were safer than Hogwarts. The sensation of blood magic tickled at Rogge's dark affinity. He suspected something about bloodlines, but he couldn't prove it. Looking at Dumbledore's kindly face, Rogge warned himself, thinking too much could get you killed. Madame Pomfrey treated Harry immediately in the school hospital and quickly shooed everyone out of the ward. Dumbledore stood outside the door and said quietly to Rogge, Hermione, and Ron, "This must be kept secret. Do you understand?" They all hesitated for a moment. Hermione especially looked puzzled, but eventually they nodded. Once Rogge left the hospital, he exhaled. The energy bar on his panel had filled completely, and a countdown had begun. He estimated the countdown would take about a month. He wondered what would happen when it finished. He had barely returned to his dormitory before a pillow hit him, and Daphne's voice accused, "Rogge, you bastard! You used stupefy on me." Daphne pointed her wand at him, ready to cast a densaggio. "Professor Quirrell was possessed by Lord Voldemort," Rogge said. "You know who is alive." Daphne shrieked, burying herself under the covers in fright. "You knew already?" "I knew after I came back from the Forbidden Forest. I let you sleep for your own safety." Rogge was glad Slytherin had single dorms, otherwise explaining why Daphne was in his bed would have been awkward. "There's nothing to worry about now. Our savior has once again defeated you-know-who." "That's great, but it was no good sleep." Daphne stamped on Rogge's foot with a vicious stomp that made him gasp. "Bubble, are you there?" Rogge sat down and rubbed his sore foot. "Little Master, Bubble is always here." The house elf dispelled his disillusionment charm and straightened. "Bubble only caught 3 unicorns, Little Master." He lowered his head and handed over an old wand and a battered brown nabag. 3? That's more than enough for breeding." Rogge was pleased. He'd expected catching even one would be difficult. There was a reason the ministry forbade house elves from using wands. Their talent would threaten wizarding authority if they could all wield magic so freely. "Well done," he patted Bubble. The elf puffed up with pride. "You'll take the unicorns to the magical menagerie in Diagon Alley," Rogge instructed. "I've arranged temporary boarding for them." "Little Master, Bubble will do this." Bubble accepted the task without hesitation and apparated away. Rogge rubbed his temples. The menagerie charged 20 galleons per day per unicorn for boarding. 3 unicorns would be 60 galleons a day, an outrageous sum. And he'd have to include a breeding enclosure in the estate's plans, which would be another heavy expense. Harry had done something monumental, and his legend rippled through the school. No one knew exactly what had happened, only that he had protected something extraordinary and foiled Quirrell's plot. Rogge remembered Dumbledore's order to keep the matter secret, but the secret was already leaking. "You were involved, too," Daphne complained when she caught him watching the other students' expressions. The little lions of the Slytherin common room wore smug looks that annoyed her. "To be fair, I was involved and not involved," Rogge sighed. Cerberus, the clever Keys, and Ron's heroics had all interfered with his plans. He hadn't gotten the stone, but the panel's energy was full and he'd secured 3 unicorns, useful for magical conservation. He'd even heard Dumbledore had ventured into the Forbidden Forest looking for them, but had found nothing. "Results are out! Results are out!" someone shouted in the courtyard corridor. The players scattered from their games and converged, suddenly tense, like prisoners about to be led to the block. "The results are out?" Daphne asked in surprise. "So soon? Let's go see." Rogge and Daphne hurried to the Great Hall. Professor Snape stood before the Slytherin table, his expression guarded, but Rogge noticed the subtle lift at one corner of his mouth. Rolled-up report cards were arranged on the table in a pyramid. Snape had evidently enjoyed the theatrics. "What? Only Slytherin's results are out. How is that possible? They're usually announced with the House Cup. Why release them early this year?" "Maybe their grades were so good, Professor. Snape couldn't wait." Chapter 99, Mr. Percent. "Then what about Dean?" "Is it because our grades were too poor?" someone muttered. "Damn it. No, Professor. I wasn't talking about you." The little wizard hurried to apologize. Luckily, Snape was in a better mood today and didn't dock any points. "Rogge, Madam Hooch said your performance exceeded her expectations and gave you an E." If you keep working, you can get O's in all your subjects. Snape said it with the faintest trace of regret, though everyone could see he was enjoying himself. Dean, who got top this time? Daphne asked curiously. The other first years leaned forward, eager. Rogge Travis, undoubtedly first place, although Professor McGonagall complained she could easily have tied it with Miss Granger. Snape handed out report cards, his chest slightly puffed. Slytherin had done well this year, especially the newcomers. Their averages rivaled Ravenclaw's, and the top student in the year was from their own house. Snape moved through the pile of papers with quiet satisfaction. Dean, how many house points do we have this year? Malfoy waved his report card, excited. No scolding from his father on the way home, maybe even more pocket money. 542 points. Far ahead. Snape tried to keep a straight face, but a smile slipped onto his lips when the Slytherin table erupted into cheers. If nothing strange happened, the House Cup would belong to Slytherin again. This would be their 7th consecutive victory. Rogge, quieter than the rest, only applauded politely. With his contributions this year, the house had reached a new high. Still, Dumbledore was Dumbledore, the man who made and often bent the rules. Rogge knew some of the points in that hourglass might not remain unchallenged. The little snakes celebrated all the same. They wore their fresh robes with pride, ready for the House Cup to be handed to them. Since Slytherin had won the previous year, the Great Hall itself was already draped in green and silver banners bearing the coiled snake crest. Another year has passed, Dumbledore said from the podium, adjusting his half-moon spectacles with a cheerful air. Before we enjoy these delicious treats, I must trouble everyone to listen to this old man's platitudes. His speeches were long and predictable. Most students listened with varying degrees of patience. Only the Slytherins seemed particularly eager this time. Now, we will first proceed with the House Cup award ceremony. The specific scores of each house are as follows. 4th place, Gryffindor, 312 points. Dumbledore's voice rolled through the hall. Even though they already suspected it, the lions at the Gryffindor table felt a pang of loss and shame. Harry, Hermione, and Neville looked especially guilty. Their rule-breaking had cost their house 150 points. 3rd place, Hufflepuff, 352 points. 2nd place, Ravenclaw, 426 points. 1st place, Slytherin, 542 points. Dumbledore announced. A thunder of cheers and stomping erupted from the Slytherin table. Rogge followed Malfoy in tapping a goblet against the wooden table in celebration, and the little snakes made enough noise to rattle the banners. I must say, this is an extremely high score, Dumbledore said, and raised a hand to quiet the Slytherins. However, there are a few recent events to take into account. A hush fell over the hall. Daphne gripped Rogge's sleeve. The rest of the table went suddenly tense. Actually, we still have some points that haven't been added, Dumbledore continued. He cleared his throat and looked toward Gryffindor. Let me see. That's right. First, Mr. Ron Weasley. Rogge's smile flattened. Dumbledore was known for tipping the balance with well-timed points, just as in the original run of events. Ron's bravery on the chessboard would bring 60 points back to Gryffindor. Hermione's quick reasoning would add another 70 points. Harry's actions at the end of term were bound to be rewarded. Third, our Mr. Harry Potter. I think everyone already knows what happened at the end of the term. Dumbledore's words were unassailable. Harry had protected something mysterious. Praising and rewarding him seemed entirely fitting. Fearless courage, extraordinary bravery. After the usual flourish, Dumbledore said, "For this, I will award Gryffindor 100 points." The Gryffindor table exploded into cheers, their voices soaring until the rafters seemed to vibrate. Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw applauded politely at the turn of events. Only Slytherin sat unnaturally still. Every snake was counting in their heads. In one swift calculation, they realized Gryffindor and Slytherin were now level, both on 542 points. Is there more? The Slytherins asked in a low chorus, eyes fixed on the head table. Daphne's eyes filled. Rogge patted her shoulder, trying to keep her calm. It's not over yet, he murmured. Clap, clap, clap. Rogge began to applaud. The rest of the Slytherins hesitated, then followed, polite, nervous, restrained. The sound was less from joy and more from the awkward acceptance of ceremony. Rogge's smile was a little bitter. He could have given Harry one more point, he thought, But he didn't. Dumbledore really knows how to make me want to cry. Professor Snape sat at the teacher's table with a storm cloud of a face, emotions complicated, loyalty to his house on one side, to Lily's child on the other. Dumbledore raised his hands again to quiet the hall, everyone leaning forward. "There are many kinds of courage," he said, and his gaze settled on Neville. He spoke at length about Neville's growth, then, almost sparingly, added, "For this, I will award 10 points." The Gryffindors erupted anew. Slytherin's side of the hall grew colder and quieter. "Marcus, calm down," Rogge hissed to his prefect, pinning him down. Marcus clenched his jaw and stilled. Around the table, Slytherins held each other's hands and bit back tears of disappointment. They had led by so much, how could they be overtaken in the final moments? "Rogge, why? This is so unfair," Daphne whispered, the tears now threatening to spill. Rogge rose from his seat. Daphne stood with him. One by one, the Slytherins stood, until the great hall was full of green silhouetted figures rising as one. The sudden movement hushed the Gryffindors' celebration like a hand across a harp. Dumbledore blinked, surprised. He hadn't expected this. "Humph, can't accept defeat? Going to leave?" Ron called, disdain heavy in his voice. The expected outbreak of argument did not come. Rogge spoke, measured and calm. "Headmaster, you are right. There are many kinds of courage. One kind is the courage to face where blood has been shed." He clapped once, slowly, and the sound felt deliberate. The Slytherins, led by him, gave a full, generous round of applause. It was not a grudging, low clap. This was loud, unanimous, and unmistakable. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff, unsure what to do, joined in. The Gryffindors, suddenly on the receiving end of this strange, sweeping ovation, sat awkwardly. The cheers felt almost patronizing, as if Slytherin were applauding out of pity, and that made the Lions wince. The great hall hummed with the strange tension of victory snatched and honor reclaimed in a way no one could quite name. Chapter 100, Tomb of Alder. "It seems we need to make some small changes to our decorations here." Dumbledore nodded, making no further comment on Rogge's remark. The great hall shifted from green to a vibrant red. The enormous serpent vanished. In its place, the Gryffindor lion rose, regale and proud. If the idea of a shadow prefect had before been whispered among a handful of first-year Slytherins, Rogge had now watched the title's true birth with his own eyes. Snape forced an awkward smile and took Professor McGonagall's hand as if everything had slipped back into its old shape. On a lonely slope across the Black Lake, Rogge dug a deep pit. In his hand was a wand, 9 inches, alder, unicorn hair core. Alders, Ollivander used to say, suit a helpful, considerate, loyal sort of wizard. Perhaps for that reason Quirrell, who had once been naive and trusting, believed Lord Voldemort's lies and died where he had once learned. "Not even a ghost remains," Rogge murmured, and buried the wand. "Professor, you're here?" Snape's voice came from lower on the hill. He climbed up with an expression Rogge recognized as worry. "Rogge, about the House Cup." "Professor, it's in the past now, isn't it?" Rogge smiled, a small, rueful thing that only made Snape look more uncomfortable. Rogge tilted the vial he had kept. The blood he had refused to hand over to Voldemort stained the soil. It wasn't an act of generosity. It was useless now, because Snape's secret had been added to it. "You could call this a tomb," Rogge said. "The wand's owner is dead. Mr. Ollivander always said the wand chooses the wizard, and Alder stands for a loyal companion. I wanted it to go with him." He looked toward the castle, its towers and turrets intricate, silent, and magnificent in the sunlight. Beneath those roofs, in the hidden chambers, who could say how many legends had been born, how many secrets still lay unspoken? Was Quirrell ever beyond saving? Snape asked. Snape didn't answer. He didn't know how to. He stared at the damp earth and shook his head, words failing him. Maybe at the start, when Quirrell had come to Hogwarts for an interview, he still had a chance. Maybe when he'd run to Dumbledore on Halloween, there had been time. When, then, did he become irredeemable? When Voldemort possessed him during the Quidditch match, or the moment he killed the unicorn in the Forbidden Forest? "Perhaps an alder will grow here," Snape finally sighed, and they turned away. On the train home, Rogge sketched the emblem for the Ravenclaw Magical Society. His quill traced a shield on parchment. The border looked like woven metal, a nest. At its center sat a black raven, one talon resting on a ribbon inscribed in runes. "Truth is eternal." Why aren't these lilies of the valley in full bloom? Daphne asked from across the compartment, peering at the design. They represent the 7 school years, Rogge explained. If a year's assessment isn't passed, that lily won't bloom. Daphne frowned. We're assessed every year? Yes, Rogge set the quill down. The society's standards aren't low. Won't that mean there'll be very few members? She fretted. Few? Rogge smiled. Daphne, if all the lilies on your emblem bloomed, how proud would you be? I'd wear it every day, she said without hesitation. Exactly. This emblem is an honor, a symbol of identity. If honor becomes common as cabbages, no one will value it. The Ravenclaw Magical Society wants true wizards, not people who spend their days networking or living off family glory. So joining won't be easy, Daphne said, bright with pride at the thought. And if no new flowers bloom for 2 years in a row, you'll be demoted. Rogge tapped the parchment. Gold becomes silver, silver becomes bronze. Not bad, Daphne murmured, pleased. Hermione appeared in the corridor, and he waved her in. Their looks. Try not to take them to heart, Rogge warned. The compartment was mostly Slytherins, still sour about the house cup. Daphne kept her head down. Rogge slid Hermione into the seat beside him. I came to apologize, she began. For the house cup? Don't. It's not your fault. Rogge made light of it. Daphne gave a small, offended hum, which only made Hermione look more apologetic. Rogge reached across to soothe her. Professor McGonagall deducted 20 points from us, but 150 from you. You and I know what was under that trapdoor. Harry protected it. No matter how you look at it, you deserve the cup. Hermione flushed, uneasy. But, principal's extra points. She faltered. Oh, that. Rogge laughed, and the sound eased the tension. Don't dwell on it. Remember Dean Snape. Professor Dumbledore is a Gryffindor. A little favoritism is hardly surprising. Hermione brightened. Is this the Ravenclaw Magical Society you mentioned? The emblem is lovely. I don't see any problems. Yes, I've applied for an unused classroom as a meeting place. Daphne will be our first member. She did well in her assessments this term. Daphne straightened, chest puffed with pride. Can members from other houses join? Hermione asked. Of course. Anyone who meets our requirements can apply. Want to join, Hermione? Rogge already knew she would remember the standards he'd outlined. Yes, I got O's in everything except flying. There's no flying in second year, so I won't fall behind you then. They laughed, and the awkwardness of the house cup faded. What are your summer plans besides fixing up the house? Daphne asked. Rogge listed quietly what he'd be doing, repairing the manor, dealing with a troublesome golden snitch, sorting out a vault, and mentioned, with a rueful glance, that he would have to accompany his irritating sister on a trip to Egypt. Annoying sister? Daphne murmured. Bella, Rogge said. She used to be a Black, now a Lestrange. My mother's maiden name was Lestrange, too, which made me curious. I asked around. My maternal grandparents came from France. They aren't part of the British Lestrange family. He let the curiosity go. Some things didn't need answers yet. Can we visit when the house is repaired? Hermione asked. No problem. It's on the island of Ireland, though. You'll need to use the Flu network. My fireplace won't work, Hermione sighed. My parents are muggles. They can't apply. You can go to the Leaky Cauldron and use their network, Rogge suggested. They promised to write and wave farewell as the train pulled into the station. Rogge scanned the platform for Jessica, but she wasn't there. He shouldered his luggage, feeling a small, persistent ache and a nagging sense of unease as he stepped down into the crowds.